Welcome to the February 17th Housing and Community Development Committee meeting. We will roll call in to establish a quorum.
Chair Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Isles.
Here.
Councilmember Harkaris.
Here.
Councilmember Rogers.
Here.
Committee Member King. Committee Member Murray. Committee Member Intemera.
Here.
Committee Member Zalomi.
Here.
Committee Member Hilton.
All right, we have established a quorum. We'll continue on to public comment. We have 42 people who have signed up for public comment. Everyone will have 2 minutes. And so as you sit there, prepare your 2-minute remarks. Before we begin, just cause, I just want to comment on a few things before you comment to try to set the stage a little bit. I was on this committee the last term. There was an understanding from committee members that we were going to continue discussing just cause at some point. It was not a commitment to adopt anything. It was a commitment to continue the discussion. That never happened. It was sidelined, not because the committee voted for it to be sidelined, but simply because it was I believe, prerogative of the chair at that time to sideline it. As chair, my intention is to bring it back for a discussion, for consideration, which is a continuation of what the city had already committed to doing last term. And so what I really want people to hear is it's not a commitment it's not us saying we're going to support or adopt anything. It's just we made a promise that we were going to consider it, that we were going to discuss it. It is my intention as chair to make sure that happens. But price fixing, I've talked to a few people about this, but I want everybody to understand this, is that the way our process works, we have a referrals process. 3 council members or a city manager and 2 other council members, they can make a referral. Once they make a referral, it goes to the referrals committee. This is all public information, meaning that you can attend referrals committee meetings. You can see everything that's on the referrals list. Once it's at the referrals committee, they get to decide the venue that it appears at, what committee it appears at. And they also give that chair an idea of what quarter usually they want it to appear on an agenda. And then the chair says, yes, I'll make sure that happens. Price fixing or any other item is on this agenda because it has to be. So it's not any indication of like how quickly it's moving through the process or people, you're rushing it through. It just, the way our referrals process works, it has to appear on the agenda in a certain quarter. And that's determined again by a referrals committee. So it's on the agenda because it's time for it to be on the agenda. Now, what happens once it gets on the agenda is up to this body. It can be tabled, can't be held at committee, but it can be tabled here. It can be moved on to council, and at council it can be tabled or held or voted down or approved. But it's no indication of how quickly it will move. It's just it's time for it to be on an agenda, and so that's why it's here this evening. If you hear someone say something that you were going to say, you can always say, hey, more power to them. I want to emphasize their point, but you don't need to say the exact same thing. You can, and it'll extend the meeting for all of us here this evening because you're here with us, but you don't have to. You have a choice to just say, yep, I agree with that comment. And leave it at that. And also you can make joint statements. I've seen this in Skokie before where they had like with one issue, representatives from the chamber, representatives from another issue. They all kind of came up at the same time. There was one person that kind of spoke to the particular issue, very efficient. I think the Skokie body at the time heard them, and you can do it that way as well. Or you can make a comment on your own. I'm not trying to censor anybody or say what you can and cannot do, just giving you some options. All right, so we will begin with Roger Williams.
Hello? All right. Third time.
I'm Roger Williams. I'm the president of Rezoning for Better Evanston and a realtor here in Evanston. We strongly advocate for Evanston's proposed just cause eviction policy. Remember, just means fair. For many Black Evanstonians, home ownership remains out of reach due to the high cost of home ownership in Evanston. This makes stable rental housing a matter of survival rather than choice. We must implement protections against arbitrary evictions to prevent the displacement of Evanston community members. By limiting evictions to legitimate grounds like non-payment or lease violations, we provide vital security for renters while maintaining a fair, clear framework for housing providers. In addition, we strongly advocate for Evanston's proposed tenant right to purchase program. By providing tenants and mission-driven organizations with a first opportunity to buy rental properties, this tool will reduce displacement and preserve affordable housing. Both the proposals for just cause eviction and tenant right to purchase programs will protect Evanston residents from displacement and will support household and community stability as Evanston continues to grow and evolve. Thank you.
Frank Hill.
Good evening. My name is Frank Hill. I'm a 7th Ward detached single-family homeowner and board vice president of Rezoning for Better Evanston, an Illinois nonprofit. RBE supports the strategic housing plan being recommended to the full council with a yes vote today. We realize that this version may require some additional definitions and wordsmithing, but we think that this is best done by the full council. Furthermore, once passed by full council, we support swift implementation of all anti-displacement initiatives identified by the city as catalytic, highlighted in blue in the plan. Our support is based on best practices and data from Evanston and around the country. Our support is also based on what we see happening around us and on our ethical beliefs. I'd like to outline a few of those. First, Evanston is suffering from an affordability crisis. This is certainly due to the fact that a family earning the area median income of $96,000 would be hard-pressed to find a home that they can afford, but the crisis is also driven, as it is in all housing markets, by a lack of supply. A healthy and balanced real estate market should have 5 to 6 months of available stock. Evanston has only 1.3. Second, Evanston continues to be segregated along racial and class lines. We are a city of what might be called drive-by diversity. That is a diverse city on paper with very few integrated diverse neighborhoods. The fact is that it's hard for many Black families to make their homes here because the average income for Black households in Evanston is just a little over half of the AMI. I have heard comments by neighbors in the 7th Ward and from this podium suggesting that if they, quote unquote, want affordable housing, they, quote unquote, can move 5 miles to the west or to Hanover Park. I find such language troubling from a community that considers itself inclusive and welcoming. We've also been subjected to scare tactics and narratives rife with misinformation. And I'm not going to stop to do this because I'm almost out of time. But we have architectural rendering that's different than the scare tactics from the opposition, that isn't the Lilliputian single-family homes dwarfed by cubes, windowless cubes, and that's what Evanston can look like. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Verna Garcia.
Good evening. Good evening. I am here because I live in the 5th Ward, and I'm very concerned about the amount of evictions that I see throughout the 5th Ward. The evictions have a great impact on my neighborhood. Every month, there is some type of eviction, and they dump all the container of the apartment into the dumpsters on the alleys, on the street, and they don't get picked up. It takes a month. So the rats come, and we have a big problem with the rats. I live in a house, but next to me there's an apartment, and every month there's somebody moving in. So something is wrong. In this, there's something wrong, and I don't know what it is, what the problem is, but it's too much. is too much and is causing families to be displaced. A lot of blacks and Latinos are moving out because those are the ones that are getting evicted. So I see my neighborhood changing constantly. I've only been there on the new house for a year, and in 1 year, there is a whole new people moving in, less blacks, less Latinos, and more of variety. So my main concern is the impact, the environmental impact that this is causing, and the suffering of the people who are being evicted. Why? I don't know why. And please do something about it, because it's not fair. It's not fair that Latinos and blacks
If you can bring
are
your
the ones that are being evicted.
comment
Thank
to
you.
a close. Thank you. Next up, we have Bonnie Wilson.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Shoot.
Sorry.
What?
No, I didn't know if you
Me
heard the
off?
beep. You're good.
All right, now I got to find my speech. Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Wilson. I'm here to speak about Housing for All, and I'm speaking as a member of the Government Political Involvement Committee for NASBAR. It's great to see in the Housing for All policies to expand housing supply and to supply in permits and approvals to have good permits and approvals to expand the housing supply, reducing the regularity barriers, having more building code moderation, plus having an ADU expansion, which I have supported for years, property tax relief tools, data-driven, targeted affordability strategies. These are all the supply-focused solutions that will reduce housing costs. However, I am concerned that in the other Housing for All policies will have unintended consequences and make housing less attainable. The just cause eviction, which will increase operational risk and costs for housing providers. This policy has faced legal questions in the past. Plus, the tenant's right to purchase could delay and introduce uncertainty into the real estate transaction. Thank you very much.
Carla Sutton.
Good evening, Carla Sutton, 5th Ward. I reviewed the proposed legislation for changes in housing policy. I haven't received any information that these policies will adequately improve the shortage of available affordable housing. Just cause and the right of first refusal are punitive policies and will not add to our current housing crisis. It is just another burden to be placed upon small landlords like me. Do you think just cause will add 1 unit of affordable housing in this community? But what will it do? It will force us to raise the rent for the most vulnerable of all tenants in Evanston. You prioritize home ownership and availability units to the bottom of your recommendations, number 13 and 14. Options like land trusts should be your primary concern. Housing for all. Implemented by punitive procedures, landlords will remove marginal residents from our community. Shame on you. Shame on you. Rest in power, Brother Jesse Jackson. Thank you.
Tina Payton.
Good evening, Tina Payton. As many of you know, my family has owned and operated affordable housing for over 50 years here in Evanston. I would suggest you take a pause on just cause and no to right of first refusal. I read an article today in the New York Times, and it says, "Why are New York apartments empty?" And it says rent laws. Mamdani in New York is planning a 4-year rent freeze on low-income rentals. Really? While many of the council has approved luxury buildings like 605 Davis, the Albion, E2, and the Link, look at the people here, my fellow landlords. We're no spring chickens. And so you keep on putting these laws and regulations instead of working with us. We're going to sell. And we're going to sell for big money. And corporate will come in and make the rents higher. So the people you're trying to protect will have less options. There's an example right here. I don't know if he wanted me to say, but Eric managed a building where she lived in. And he can elaborate on how much the rent went up after they remodeled. So I suggest you take a step back and work with us instead of try to penalize us. And I agree with Carlos. Rest in peace, Jesse Jackson, and Black Lives Matter too.
We got Paul Breslin, and after Paul will be Katie McDonald.
Okay, Paul Breslin, First Ward. I was sitting with the landlords, but I'm not one. I will make a general comment about the Housing for All plan, which is, on the one hand, I think it's a better document than Envision Evanston, although that is not a high bar to clear. I think there's some good suggestions in it and some information in it that would have guided the comprehensive plan to a more articulate conclusion, such as a study of existing needs and housing, a study of what the present housing situation is in detail, which was not otherwise done. That was supposed to precede the comprehensive plan, and yet here we are with the comprehensive plan already approved, and this is still under discussion. This is unfortunate. A global observation, there are a lot of things in the plan that I think are useful, as I've just said. There are very many of them. What is missing is a kind of an oversight, coordinating function saying how these things would operate with each other and how they would influence each other. It's like an octopus that's all tentacles and has lost its head. That's the problem. So there's good stuff in it, but it isn't coordinated. One item, and with this I'll conclude my comments, jumped out at me as a terrible idea. That is the idea that you can sell your air rights if you own a property that is below the maximum height for that zoning to a developer in other parts of the city. If you do that, and I'm a developer, I'm going to collect this the way a kid collects trading cards. And if I'm the first kid on my block to collect them all, I'm going to build the Empire State Building on Chicago Avenue. I don't think any of us want that to happen. That's it. Thank you.
After Katie McDonald, we have Rocio. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Rocio, it will be after Katie McDonald. Thank you.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Which Rocio? Because there's two.
I can't really read it. It starts, I think it's MANCERA maybe? Mancetta? Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie McDonald, and I'm with the Quadrell Evanston Tenants Union, and I live in Ward 3. When I unexpectedly lost my job and was looking to start over, Evanston was at the top of the list. I grew up in the area and my sisters raised her family here. I know Evanston is a place where people are invested in their community, and I appreciate how diverse the city is. I knew my wife and I would feel safe and accepted. We found an apartment owned by QUORUM Realty. Our lease included a $1,000 moving fee and other fees I didn't remember from my initial conversations. I winced at the unexpected cost, but figured it was an oversight on my part. When we moved in, the unit was filthy. My frustration continued when it took over a month of pestering QUORUM to get keys to the mailbox and laundry room. During this time, I had no easy way to clean our clothes, and concern about what bill was lurking in my mailbox added to my ongoing anxiety about finances. I joined the tenants union, which includes my building and 2 others managed by QUORUM Realty in Evanston. I learned from my neighbors that we were not alone in our frustration, and that some of the fees we were charged were against the Evanston RLTO. By the time I joined the tenants union, people had been fighting for months, and some residents, fed up or priced out, had left. Throughout this process, the bad faith actions of QUORUM Realty have been astounding. Week after week, they ignore our phone calls and emails, continue to theatrically plead confusion about simple requests, and they have quickly disappeared soon after our attempted negotiations. It is clear to me what they are doing. They are betting that they can keep ignoring us and no one will hold them accountable. They are watching to see what the city of Evanston will do, and so are other landlords and private equity firms in the area. These practices make it difficult for people to establish roots and impact who can come live here in the first place. The moving fee was a stretch for me during a financially difficult period, but the fact I could pay was a privilege. These practices will only make Evanston more transient and less diverse. It threatens who we are as Evanstonians, but North Park Ventures, QUORUM's parent company, does not care about our community. The tenants union continues to fight, but we can't do it alone. We are grateful to have received support from the city of Evanston during the past year. Tonight, I'm asking you for your continued support in enforcing the RLTO and holding North Park Ventures accountable. Thank you.
Rocio Mancera. And then next up will be Brian Hansen is next.
Hola, buenas noches. Voy a hablar en español y la señora Brina me va a hacer la traducción. Hola, mi nombre es Rocío Mancera y soy residente de Evanston por los últimos 25 años, de los cuales he rentado todo este tiempo. En este tiempo me he dado cuenta de que rentar es muy costoso y comprar una casa casi es imposible. Para las familias de bajos ingresos, las personas que rentamos y enfrentamos muchos retos de vivienda. Es difícil para las familias latinas conseguir una vivienda por los requisitos que piden y como renteros no tenemos pólizas que nos protejan. La vivienda asequible es un tema que me preocupa mucho porque tengo hijos y mi hijo el mayor tiene que decidir entre pagar una renta y estudiar. Para pagar la renta necesita trabajar y dejar los estudios. Y es difícil hacer las dos cosas, porque para estudiar también hay que pagar. Necesitamos mejores oportunidades para nuestras generaciones. Mi petición para ustedes es que apoyen el bienestar de las familias a través de ofrecer y preservar viviendas de bajo costo en la comunidad. Les pido que consideren pólizas que protejan a los inquilinos como la causa justa, para que seamos desalojados sin ninguna razón válida. Las políticas públicas deben priorizar la estabilidad de las familias y garantizar que todos los residentes tengan acceso a una vivienda segura, estable, accesible y para vivir con dignidad. Hoy le pido al comité y al ayuntamiento impulsar medidas que protejan a los inquilinos y fortalezcan la estabilidad de la vivienda en Evanston. Gracias por su liderazgo y por compromiso con la ciudad más justa y inclusiva.
Her name is Rocio Mancera. She's been a resident of Evanston for 25 years, which all this time she has rented, and it is impossible for her to buy a house because a lot of the Latino families are low income. Those who rent face the challenge face a challenge because it's difficult to to pay for a rent or to buy a house. For renters, there's no insurance policies, and there is no affordable housing. Her great concern is because she has children. Her oldest son has to choose between paying the rent or continuing his studies. So to pay rent, he needs to work or stop going to school. This is difficult because education is also requires to pay. We need better opportunities for our future generations. My request to you is that you support the well-being of families by offering and maintaining affordable housing in the community. I ask that you consider policies that protect tenants such as just cause, so that we are not evicted without a valid reason. Public policies must be prioritized, the stability of families, and ensure that all residents have access to safe and stable and affordable housing to live with dignity. I urge you committee to please advance the measures to protect tenants and strengthen the housing stability in Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Brian Hansen, and then next will be, after that, will be Sarah Peterson.
Hi, everyone. Brian Hansen, and I am a 24-year resident in the 6th Ward in a single-family detached home, and I want to do two things. One is encourage you all to support the Housing for All Strategic Housing Plan and send it to City Council, and the other is to think seriously about displacement strategies, including tenant rights. And as you know, this plan gives something Evanston's needed for a long time, which is a coordinated, data-driven strategy to create the homes we need and ensure people who make this community work, the families, teachers, caregivers, seniors, service workers, and others, can actually live here. This is a big step forward in moving in that direction. And, you know, I hear a lot about continued concerns about density, and sometimes with alarmist predictions about the radical transformation of Evanston. But when I read this plan, what strikes me is that it really focuses on incremental, context-sensitive increasing in the kinds of buildings that we already have in our community. Plan calls for strategic growth in the places where it makes sense, near transit, near services, on sites that are suited for development. And it pairs zoning adjustments with design standards, height limits, and neighborhood reviews so that buildings fit the scale and feel of the neighborhood. It's about adding choice, which we need in our communities. It isn't about forcing radical change. Secondly, the people in our community needs the rights that allow them to stay here. We've just heard great examples tonight about people concerned about being able to stay in their homes. There are legitimate reasons for why people can be evicted, but I think we should consider the just cause tenant protections in order to provide a base level of protections that allow people to stay in this community, because displacement's one of our biggest concerns and one of the things that has affected us most greatly. Housing for All provides a thoughtful, community-informed framework to add homes where they fit, protect the places that we cherish, and ensure that people of all ages and incomes can remain part of the fabric of the city. Thank you very much.
We have Sarah Peterson. After Sarah will be Jessica Trujillo.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Peterson, and I have been an Evanston resident for over 15 years, first as a renter and now as a homeowner in the 6th Ward. I'm also the executive director of Open Communities that's been serving this community for over 50 years to help increase equal access to housing. I'm grateful for all the work on the Housing for All plan and encourage you to support updated language to create new housing by updating the zoning code and expand by right residential development in alignment with the language in the comprehensive plan. We know we need more housing, and these strategies will move us in the right direction. As a homeowner, something I value about this community is the community that I've developed in my neighborhood over the years. the relationships that have formed over time with neighbors who watch our cats, kids who can walk together with mine to their schools, and the stability and sense of home that comes with that ongoing stability. The over 40% of Evanstonians who are renters also deserve that stability. I'm grateful to the committee's commitment that Councilmember Burns mentioned today to continue exploring this conversation of just cause. Renters are such an important part of the conversation, and I want to make sure there's more opportunity for them to come forward as well to share their needs. In addition to new housing, we need strategies to give renters stability. Home should be about more than money. Home should be about stability and community. Let's make Evanston a welcoming place where we can stay and say it's our home. Thank you.
Is Jessica here? Yep. And then after Jessica, we have Nicole. I think this is Brownlee. Okay.
Hi, I'm Jessica Trujillo. I'm an 8th Ward resident. I've been a tenant in the 8th Ward for almost all the 14 years that I've been here in Evanston as a renter. And I want to state that I come here without the convenience of anonymity because I don't have the convenience in my schedule to write in. And I wish I did because I am a renter and I see that in this room there's a lot of faces that I might face in the future asking for housing. And there's many things I want to say, and I think for the sake of time, I just want to represent myself as a tenant, that I had come to Evanston with my family as a Northwestern graduate student spouse and 2 children. Our family expanded to 4. The marriage dissolved, and my co-parent after divorce abandoned us here. So I am now a single parent family with 4 children. And I've been put into a market of needing to find housing here. And what I've experienced over time is that with 4 children and also not having an income level or another spouse, that housing becomes a challenge. I think there's more to say about Just Cause. I think I would say that Just Cause definitely needs to continue as a conversation. And what's so important to that is it provides stability and I think mostly accountability between landlord, ownership, and the tenant themselves, because what it would require is continued conversation and commitment to each other in the partnership for housing of maintaining the property. And there's some landlords in here that I see them showing up to their properties and maintaining them. There's landlords here that I heard a lot of really blatant threats, like I'm actually disgusted at the threat that I heard in front of the audience here and whomever else is listening in, when 40% plus of Evanston are residents, to have that come out. I've worked for small businesses for, a decade here probably. And I just want to say that I see small, like when we talk about Just Cause, small ownership and small businesses and tenants, I feel like there's a partnership here, and I would like to talk about that more. But in any consideration going forward, what I'd like to emphasize as a council—
Please bring your comments to a close.
Yeah, can I do it really quick?
Yeah.
Is just considering sustainability of housing, affordability for housing, and having access to it because of the community assets that we do have do prioritize families. There's a bigger conversation about the turmoil in District 65 and the families we are going to lose.
So I'm going to have to, please, because if you go over, everybody's going to go over and it messes it all up. But please continue to show up to the meetings, write to us, email us, please.
For your time.
Thank you for being here. Next up, we have Nicole Brownlee, and then after that, Scott Roberts.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Brownlee, and I'm here today as an Evanston homeowner to offer both my support of the overall vision of the Housing for All plan, as well as some more specific thoughts on several provisions within it. Regarding the goal of preserving affordable housing units, I'd like to offer my support for innovative programs like the Community Right to Purchase program, which gives tenants greater control over preserving the affordability and stability of their homes. There is strong data in other cities where programs like the DC Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act not only allows tenants to build collective ownership, but also create strong community partnerships that help mission-driven partners work side by side with their soon-to-be residents. None of these programs are perfect, of course, but there's no doubt that our city could come together and work on a program that would address the unique needs of our community with the mind to increase effectiveness and efficiency. I'd also like to give my strong support for any measure that provides robust rental and housing assistance initiatives for our most vulnerable neighbors. Programs which provide a significant share of the housing costs to renters, those which reimburse housing providers for qualified costs relating to the damages or eviction legal fees, and the right to counsel in conviction court should be enhanced and protected. I ask the committee to prioritize programs which give vulnerable families greater flexibility to live and to work in our community in Evanston. Thank you.
Scott Roberts. And then after Scott, we have Michael Thomas.
Hello, Scott Roberts, 3rd Ward, 25-year, I think, resident. I've been a renter, I've been a homeowner, condo owner, homeowner, and also, unfortunately, not against my choice, I was a landlord for a short period of time. And I just want to say that one of my experiences since I've been involved in local, like in lobbying and seeing you guys all the time, is that renters are the least represented group in local government here, and it's really criminal for that. Over 40% of our residents are renters, and we need to get them more involved. I'm not sure why, but a lot of their schedules may have a problem. It's great to see people here now, but because they're not here, I think you've got to look out for their rights. And I think that the measures inside Housing for All are a positive. I think that Just Cause could use, a little bit tweaking. I think the very small landlords might be given a little bit of grace there, but definitely the larger landlords should face these restrictions. I also would just want to say that for 3.3B, just personally, should be revised. Councilmember Girakate's suggestion that it should match the comprehensive plan, that it should be, instead of the City of Evanston will expand the area where missing middle housing can be built by right, it should instead be something like the City of Evanston will expand by right missing middle housing development in all residential districts to match what H2.1 in this comprehensive plan says. Thank you.
All right, after Michael, we have Michael Thomas. We have Eileen Thomas.
Thank you. My name is Michael Thomas. I've been a landlord in Evanston for about 50 years. I'm a data-driven guy, and one of the frustrating things about trying to evaluate the right to purchase agreements is that you can find data that supports just about any position you want to take. Whatever your position, I'll find you a reasonable sounding study that supports it. However, reading extensively about these various kinds of programs and doing some research, there are 3 characteristics that such a program that I think would make them fair to landlords that are in fact characteristics of existing programs in existing cities. The first one is let the market set the value of the property. In order to do this, you have to have a front-loaded process between the cities and the not-for-profits. What a landlord doesn't want to see is they don't want to see uncertainty and they don't want to see long delay. That means that if you're going to set up such a program, in my opinion, it can't be something that's done after the fact. It has to be something that's done so you're ready to move when you find a building. So the property owner can sign a contract. That establishes the market value of the property. You have your ducks in a row. You have your financing in a row. You have a management structure in a row. You have your tenant relations in a row. And it's possible to reach a pretty quick decision. In some municipalities, that's expected to be anywhere from a period of a few weeks to a month or 2. If you do those things, you're really eliminating a lot of the concerns of the landlord. First, that the burden of this program will disproportionately fall on them in the form of reduced property values. And secondly, that they will be subject to long, frustrating delays which frustrate buyers and reduce the value of their property. Thank you.
All right, we have Eileen Thomas. After Eileen, we're going to online, or people who signed up to make their public comment online. If you signed up to speak online and you found yourself here tonight, just come up to the podium as I call your name.
I'll be very brief. A tenant has a right to purchase the property now. If they have everything in a row, if they have the financing and so on, they can do it just like anybody else. What you're really asking for is an exclusive initial right. And I really feel that that is a burden. They certainly can purchase the property now. As a matter of fact, if I had a tenant who wanted to, I'd be happy to. They'd be right there. But I really feel that this is a burden as a small landlord and as an owner-occupied property. I may have to sell very soon, and this really puts a burden on me. I'm 79 years old. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to have this property and take care of it. So I would like to be able to reasonably do it as market quickly if I can. I really feel that this is a burden on small landlords. Thank you.
Next up is Aaron Bornstein. Yep.
Hi, my name is Aaron Bornstein. I'm a small landlord here in Evanston and president of the Evanston-based North Suburban Housing Provider Group. I speak today asking you to remove the just cause and tenant right to purchase sections from the Housing for All plan. These issues were debated extensively, as the chair alluded to, the last year or two, both at this committee and in City Council, as part of the effort to amend the RLTO, or Landlord Tenant Ordinance. Neither just cause nor right to purchase was included in the final package because these are bad policies. They are bad for tenants. They will raise rents, they complicate the landlord's job, and they are bad for real estate in general, which will just drive away investors from Evanston. I urge you to once again remove these from your plan, specifically just cause. Issue with just cause, we call it a lifetime lease scheme. It means a landlord cannot get rid of a bad tenant when the lease is up. So if you have the partier, if you have the smoker in a no smoking building, someone sneaks a pet into a no pet building, you cannot get rid of that person when the lease is up. Instead, what happens is, because you have no basis to say, I'm sorry, we're done doing business, is that the good tenant, the person who doesn't like being woken up at 4 a.m, the person who has pet allergies and says, the whole reason I moved into a no pet building or no smoking building was so I wouldn't have this, they are forced out of their unit because they cannot tolerate these living conditions. So it is a bad policy that forces out the good tenants and forces you to keep the bad tenants. Tenant right to purchase is another poor idea. It's not realistic. Nobody is capable, or very, very few, are capable of going from being a tenant to not just buying a home, which of course they have every right to do, but to buying the entire apartment building. That's not a realistic thing. And to think a person could make this leap at the same exact moment that their landlord is in a position to sell the building, this is not a realistic thing. Chicago has tried to do this. They have their Northwest Side Ordinance, where about a 1 mile, half-mile square area for a year now has had a right to purchase. No tenant has made a purchase. It's not a serious thing. Instead, investors flee the region because it's bad policy. So again, please take these out of your plan. You've done a lot of work on the Housing for All plan, but just cause and right to purchase are bad ideas, and I ask you to remove them. Thank you.
Eric Passett.
I'm Eric Passett. I'm the owner of North Shore Apartments and Condos. We manage and represent over 25 buildings in Evanston, and I'm here to oppose right of first refusal and just cause. And I'd like to state the U.S. Constitution protects private property ownership primarily through the 5th and 14th Amendment, prohibiting the government from depriving individuals of property without due process, which is what we'd call some of this. It guarantees the right to acquire, use, and transfer property, limiting government's infringement on these rights. So right of first refusal would be a violation of the U.S. Constitution. I can't put it any more plainly than that. Now, just cause is a whole different story. We don't take glory in or joy in evicting people. You know, not at all. It's very costly. Just to say hello to a lawyer to evict is about $1,500. Once you go to court, it's close over $10,000. And we almost never collect the money that's owed to us. We just want back our property so we can rent it to somebody else. So to not be able to, I mean, we always have the right to evict, naturally. But when somebody's slow pay and we don't want to renew their lease, now we have to take them to court. If somebody's smoking, like he said, a non-smoking building, now we don't have the right to do that. I will tell you that the landlords I work for, we're not buying any more properties in Evanston. We're actually selling our properties, is exactly what happened over here. The owner I worked for that got sick and tired of the city of Evanston infringing upon their rights, said, I'm 60 years old, I'm going to sell the building. So now that affordable housing that we have, most of our buildings I don't represent any buildings that are very high end, not at all. $1,500 one bedrooms, $1,200 studios, you know, $18,000 to $2,000 two bedrooms, very affordable for most people, I'd say. But once that building got sold, the 3 bedrooms went to $4,000. How is that affordable? How is a 2-bedroom at $3,000 affordable? It's not. So by pushing out landlords like us to sell, we're in a process of selling another building. It's going to go from 1 bedroom from $1,500 over $2,000 easily. So thank you.
Lisa Pildes. Is Lisa online? Lisa Pildes. And then after that, Katie McDonald.
Hi, I'm Lisa Pildes. I've lived in Evanston for over 50 years. I'm a property owner of mostly older 2-flats. I also am asking you to remove the sections of the Housing for All plan relating to just cause and rental licensing and tenant right to purchase. These 3 anti-housing items have appeared before the council many times, going back at least as far as 2012 when I was a member of the council's landlord licensing committee. It's discouraging to think that we will need to go back to litigating these items when they have been consistently and justifiably defeated many times before. Just cause ordinances turned logic on its head by assuming that a landlord would willingly choose to non-renew or spend the time and money to go to court to evict a lease-abiding, rent-paying tenant. Instead, they create the possibility the most disruptive tenant will be the forever tenant, as the landlord is prevented from curing the situation through simple non-renewal, but other tenants can move out in search of more peaceful apartments. Licensing advocates have never been able to show that licensing rental property will increase the number, condition, and safety of rental units over current registration with inspections. Right to purchase ordinances tie the hands of property owners for months, delaying possible sales and chilling market interest in the property. Why would a small landlord like me, the source of much of the naturally occurring affordable housing in Evanston, want to tie up what is probably the majority of his net worth in such an illiquid bureaucratic tangle? Please remove just cause, rental licensing, and right to purchase from the Housing for All plan. Thank you.
Okay. Unless there's another Katie McDonald online, which I don't think there is. What's your name? Last name? Yeah, you're coming up. Yep. Is there a Rishi? Am I pronouncing that right? Did I pronounce it right? Yeah, please. And correct me if I didn't pronounce it right. And then after, yeah, you're coming up as well. And then after is Karen Olivier, I believe. Olivier. All right. Please.
Hi, my name is Arushi, and I am a member of the Quadrell Evanston Tenants Union. Quadrell Realty Group owns a number of apartment buildings in Evanston, and Quadrell is a subsidiary of the private equity firm North Park Ventures, owned by Robert Sekula and Eric Turin. When I moved to Evanston last year, I was excited to be near my family once again after living on the West Coast for many years. However, my welcome to Evanston turned out to be not what I had envisioned. Shortly after I moved, Quadrell's maintenance employee notified me that there was flooding in the unit below me and that I could not use my kitchen sink until a blockage had been removed. I was told that a plumber was going to come the next day. However, I heard nothing from Quadrell the next day, or the day after that, or the day after that, or the day after that. Despite multiple attempts by myself and my neighbors to contact Quadrell, we did not receive an update from them to confirm if we could use our kitchen sink for another 4 days after the plumber had come and resolved the blockage. I was truly shocked. I had thought I experienced bad landlords before, but I had never experienced this level of negligence. This was just the first of a number of frustrating and concerning occurrences with Quadrell. The Quadrell Evanston Tenants Union has accomplished a lot in the past year. I want to thank the City of Evanston for the support we have received throughout. Your support has made a meaningful difference in our negotiation efforts with North Park Ventures. However, the work is not done. As of today, Evanston residents in North Park's buildings continue to be charged illegal fees. Many fear that they will be displaced by yet another 10 to 30% increase in rent, and others worry about the next time they will be left with no heat on a sub-zero day. I ask the city to continue to support our cause by ensuring the enforcement of the RLTO and holding North Park Ventures, Robert Sekula, and Eric Turin accountable. People are looking to this as an example. By taking action, this is an opportunity for Evanston to show that people can count on building a life here. Finally, many current and previous residents of Evanston experienced major housing instability when their homes came under ownership of North Park Ventures. Additionally, retaliation from North Park Ventures has been a very real fear of many union members. These issues could have been prevented with strong just cause legislation. I support just cause and strongly believe that it would contribute to housing stability and fairness for Evanstonians. Thank you.
Karen Olivier. And then after Karen will be Tiffany Sanders Sostrin.
Good evening, all. My name is Karen Olivier, and I'm born and raised in Evanston, and I am also a member of the Quadrell Tenants Union. I'm here tonight to sound the alarm about a bad actor in our city, Quadrell Realty. In March of last year, tenants from 15 of the 18 units in the Michigan Avenue building unionized to push back against massive rent and fee increases that threatened to displace us. A letter was sent outlining the union's demands. Subsequently, the union has tried to negotiate in good faith for over a year, but Quadrell has refused to commit to following the law and meeting the lawful requests of the tenants. They are actively violating the Evanston Residential Landlord and Tenant Ordinance. They are overcharging us for internet, technology, and insurance fees, and we have the receipts to prove it. They refuse to make prompt repairs, and they refuse to follow the law. This isn't just our problem, but 45% of Evanston residents rent their homes. When landlords like Quadrell refuse to negotiate and continue to break the law, they threaten the stability of nearly half of our city's population. This is why I'm urging this committee to act. We must prioritize keeping existing residents in their homes. We've made our demands clear to Quadrell: end the rent and fee hikes, make repairs, and follow the law. We ask the City of Evanston to step up and protect us, or landlords will keep exploiting the loopholes. Additionally, I'd like to implore the city to do more than just pursue just cause, but to implement it moving forward, to support the anti-displacement and pro-tenant components of the Evanston Strategic Housing Plan, such as rental assistance, landlord licensing, and city-funded financial counseling. I urge this committee to adopt strong protections and programs that ensure tenants not only live in Evanston, but thrive here. Thank you.
After Tiffany, we have Jim McKee.
Good evening, Chair Burns and members of the committee. My name is Tiffany Sostrin. I'm from Daily Strategy, and I'm here tonight on behalf of our client, RealPage, a property management software company that serves landlords across Evanston and the broader Chicago area. Mike Semko from RealPage is also available on the Zoom to answer any questions you may have. We are not here today in any attempt to block, stop, or gut the rental pricing ordinance. We absolutely want to maintain protections for renters. Today, we are proposing amendments to the ordinance to strengthen, clarify, and improve its enforceability. I ask the committee to take its time to get this right and table the rental pricing ordinance while all stakeholders are brought to the table. When most people hear algorithmic pricing software, they picture Wall Street landlords. But the reality is that most users are everyday property owners. Someone managing a two-flat, a small rental that they inherited, a unit above their garage. These folks use pricing tools in order to understand the market and set a fair rent. That's not price fixing, that's just running a small business. And right now, the ordinance as written doesn't clearly distinguish between the two. I brought copies of amendments to the ordinance that could help make that clear. By adding a 90-day recency threshold to the definition of non-public competitor data, information that's several months old and effectively public knowledge. Without this boundary as written today, the ordinance could set up small landlords using basic market research tools to inadvertently violate the law. The second change adds carve-outs for appraisals, project financing, and software development, standard activities that have nothing to do with coordinating rents between competitors. None of this is untested. Berkeley adopted these exact definitions in their enacted ordinance, and it's working very well there. I respectfully ask the committee to delay a vote tonight. This ordinance will affect thousands of property owners and tenants across Evanston, and the stakeholders most impacted, such as small landlords, property managers, and housing advocates, deserve a meaningful opportunity to weigh in on its real-world consequences before it moves forward. A brief delay to allow for additional public input isn't a setback. It's good governance. These amendments sharpen the ordinance's aim. They keep enforcement focused on actual bad actors while protecting the small landlord just trying to run a fair business. I hope you'll consider both amendments and the request for additional stakeholder engagement seriously. Thank you.
Did you want to give us those amendments now? Yeah. We have Jim McKee, and then after Jim is Cooper. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jim McKee, and I'm an Evanston resident, and I'm also a landlord, housing provider of affordable housing, I would say, mostly low to moderate income tenants. Been doing it for not as long as Tina Payton, but for over 30 years, so for quite a while. And I just want to start by saying we do have problems here in Evanston with housing. I agree with a lot of comments I hear here tonight that you have problems with affordable housing. There's not enough, numbers going down. There's people who are losing their homes. We also have this Quadrell, a bad actor. I'm all for continuing a conversation. I'd like to be a part of that. I offer up my services, okay? But I wish it would be, to solve these problems, it would be as easy as just passing something, calling it just cause eviction, and that solves the problem. But I don't think it does at all. We have unintended consequences, and we have the devil that's in the details, okay? And unintended consequences, people have mentioned, a low-income housing provider like myself becomes has less incentive to want to provide housing if there's going to be more and more restrictions put on, my ability to not deal with, a problem tenant. Also, the talk about how a tenant could, under just cause, a tenant could not have their lease renewed because of material violation of the lease. The problem is, if there is a problem tenant who is making life miserable for other people in the building, they never agree that they've materially violated the lease. So then it comes down to a dispute between the landlord and the tenant, and who's going to mitigate, who's going to decide that. So anyway, my 2 minutes are up, and I haven't said all I wanted to, but that's a start.
Next up, Tim Barnett. And then after Tim, Cooper.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tim Barnett. I'm relatively new to all this. I owned a home for a long time, and I've been renting for about a year and a half in Evanston. I'm a member of the Quadrell Tenants Union, and I want to really thank the union for all the work it's done to support me. But I also, listening tonight, I can't help but think about a popular meme about the billionaires being the problem and the rest of us fighting about it. And I feel like there's a lot of renters and a lot of small landlords who are sort of really butting heads tonight, and I'm not sure where the corporate landlords like Quadrell are right now, or their part in this conversation. So having said that, I'll just say there are a lot of issues I could discuss, but I'll focus on one. Like most, I didn't pay much attention to the fees listed on my lease when signing, and it was only through the hard work of fellow union members, with the support of Mayor Biss and Councilman Isles and the city's threat to sue, that we discovered Quadrell was charging tenants more for fees than they were paying for things like utilities, electronic door systems, etc. This kind of profits is illegal in Evanston, and yet continues today unchecked, both for long-term tenants and for people just moving in. Once caught, Quadrell agreed to return legal fees to its unionized tenants, but that hasn't happened, and there's no indication it will anytime soon. There's also no indication that Quadrell will ever stop these practices in its other Evanston buildings, where most people don't even know they're being overcharged. We're grateful the city stepped in earlier this year, and their threat to sue Quadrell really created some movement, but we need more. We need the city to ramp up efforts to uphold the law. In addition, working more closely with organizations like the Metropolitan Tenants Organization and Open Communities would help. A just cause policy, for example, would be hugely important for me, because as things stand, Quadrell can refuse to renew my lease because I'm speaking tonight, and that's not okay. I'll just close with the city might have never known its laws were being flagrantly broken if it weren't for the union and the work of MTO. And something is wrong when community organizations are doing the work of government. The ones unearthing illegal activity and fighting for justice without effective governmental systems of accountability. Something must be done. We're here to work side by side with you, with the city council and the mayor's office to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Cooper. Is Cooper in the house? Or virtual? Nobody? All right, next up is Peter O'Brien. And then after Peter will be Daniel Skirmahorn.
Good evening, committee. My name is Peter O'Brien. I'm a resident of the 3rd Ward, also a property owner and manager in various neighborhoods in Evanston. Just speaking in opposition to the just cause provision and the tenants' rights to purchase of the Housing for All ordinance. I think it's slightly misleading the way, or confusing the way it's being discussed as a just cause eviction provision, because evictions are already just cause. When you go into court, it's a court process of eviction, and you need to show just cause. It's already established. What the council or the committee is considering here is changing what is a just cause, the definition of just cause. So a written expiration date in a contract for real estate is well established as a just cause to end a lease. And if the tenant holds over, then you proceed with the eviction. But to change that, I just think that the confusion it causes by phrasing it as just cause eviction, it's not really that. Evictions are already just cause. You're changing what the just causes include. Secondly, the tenant right to purchase. Briefly, I just think that the worst case scenario of this you've already experienced on Wesley in the properties that were condemned, owned by nonprofits. I think you're not going to have, as Aaron mentioned earlier, you're not going to have a lot of tenants buying properties. You're going to get a bunch of fly-by-night nonprofits coming to town. You think you're getting rid of a for-profit business, but you're just pushing the motivations and the profits to different places for people who will be unqualified and won't have the financing to take care of the buildings. Thanks.
All right, after Daniel, we'll have Megan McClung.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Dan Skirmahorn. I'm with Skirmahorn & Company in Evanston. We've managed real estate in town for about 58 years, and I'm here to speak against both the just cause and the right of first refusal, but actually in favor of the incentives that the Housing for All seem to address. And I think that is the situation, or that is the way we are going to improve what I think everybody in this room would agree is a lack of affordable housing. I don't think anybody would disagree that we need to get more affordable housing in place in Evanston, but we need to do it by incentivizing investors rather than penalizing those who have invested their time and money and effort into their properties all these years. There's been a lot of discussion about small operating landlords and perhaps giving some carve out to them, but I think you have a group of people who have been in this town for a long time and have been good partners with their tenants and have naturally occurring affordable housing that is at risk when you put together the restrictions and the punitive nature of some of these proposals here with just cause and the tenant's right to purchase. So if we're really looking to advance affordable housing, I think it's a great idea. I think there are great ways to do that. There are incentives in here in terms of zoning and opportunities to build in areas where it's been more restrictive than it needs to be. But by putting more restrictions on existing landlords who have been good community partners, small, medium, large, is not the way to advance affordable housing in Evanston. Thank you.
After Megan will be M. Rocio Rodriguez.
Good evening, committee and council members. I'm Megan McClung. I'm a managing attorney with the Moran Center for Youth Advocacy, and I'm here today because housing stability is youth stability, and the decisions now shape the futures of the families that the Moran Center serves. I want to share our strong support for the anti-displacement and pro-tenant components of the Housing for All plan, including expanding rental assistance and focusing on longer-term affordable housing. The plan also recognizes something eviction defense advocates like myself have been saying for years. We cannot end housing displacement without preventing more people from being displaced, and we cannot prevent displacement without preventing eviction. For that reason, I want to emphasize that continued debate on just cause, as Councilmember Burns has said, those are protections that remains unfinished business. Whether members ultimately support or oppose just cause, it's a conversation that should continue. It must be fully had. And so the Housing for All plan appropriately calls for strengthening tenant legal protections, including just cause and right to counsel, and those protections deserve serious, thorough consideration. So the Housing for All strategic plan, with the proposed changes in the consent items, reflects a tremendous amount of work. And it's strong and it should become actionable, and I urge this committee to take action now and move it forward to City Council. Thank you.
All right, M. Rocio, and then after will be Dominic. Dominic, yeah, see you.
I just want to make a comment real quick before I start. It's very sad how this building is not disabled friendly. Starting with that, good evening. My name is Rocio. I am from Peace, and I am a displaced single mother with a full-time job, but I cannot afford the high rent. I am here because it's deeply upsetting to hear that just cause has been pushed to the sidelines. What I continue to hear are the same talking points, but I am not hearing real commitments to inclusion or equality. Tenants cannot be put to the side, just as a discussion of just cause cannot be put to the side. We're not here asking for intentions. We're here asking for action. Action to strengthen the tenant protections against unjustified evictions. Action to prevent the involuntary displacements of long-term residents. Action to preserve the affordable housing that already exists in our community and to get some new ones. And action to invest in education and enforcement of fair housing law. I strongly support the adoption of just cause ordinance, which would require landlords to have a valid reason to evict a tenant or refuse to renew a lease. This policy would provide a greater stability for families and help prevent unjustified evictions that destabilize our neighborhoods. Just cause is not punishing landlords. It is creating clear, fair standards that support both tenants and responsible property owners. When tenants have stability, they are better able to care for their homes and remain engaged in their communities. At the same time, landlords benefit from reduced turnover, clearer expectations, and stronger communications. Tenants and landlords
You can
should be
bring your
working in
comments to a
partnership
close, please.
instead of being against each other.
Thank you for your
That's
comments.
all I see.
Thank you. And before you leave, if you could either meet with me or city staff to explain what challenges you had tonight with accessibility, as well as any ideas you may have, please do that with myself or staff, depending on how long you can be here. Thank you. Dominic is next, and then we have, I actually can't read this one that well. It just says I think, Saran, something like that. So that person will be next up. Dominic, please.
Right. Thank you, committee members and staff. My name is Dominic Voss. I'm the Director of Fair Housing at Open Communities. In our view, the strategic housing plan as currently drafted is really strong. It promotes pursuing growth with sort of an unwavering eye towards equity, achieving affordability through density, and fairness through tenant protections. I won't go into the whole just cause shtick here. We've had a lot of that tonight. I'm going to address kind of a couple quick things just in response to some public comment. First, I just want to add my voice to the kind of growing chorus here supporting what I think was Councilmember Burns' suggestion to explore a right to counsel program. If it's a pilot program, I mean, they've done this in the city of Chicago with LCBH at the helm, and it's been really successful. You can't have, in preventing homelessness, preventing eviction is a huge part of that, and right to counsel would be really effective. Just to address the kind of two comments with regard to just cause and public comment from the Illinois Realtors, Michael Dobro's here. Respect Michael a lot. We just do disagree on this issue. There's a couple things that I just wanted to sort of address and claims that were made that I think are unfounded. So there's a claim that just cause would discourage new construction and accelerate the loss of rental supply. So this very topic was studied by researchers at the University of Minnesota. It's in a paper called The Good Case for Good Cause. The research question was, do good cause eviction protections reduce the rate of housing production? The result was no. Housing production in California, Oregon, and New Hampshire did not decline after the passage of good or just cause relative to nearby states without the legislation. So I encourage folks to take a look at that study, review the methods, decide for yourself whether you think it's compelling. I also just want to add, I'm really thrilled to see so many tenants here tonight, the Quadrell Tenants Union, folks who are really putting themselves at a risk of retaliation when they come out to do this kind of work. So just appreciate that and appreciate your all's time. Thank you.
Again, anybody with the first, it just says it's the first initial, and then it starts with a C. The last thing I think starts with a C, C-U-R-R-A-N. Anybody? Okay. Next up, we have Sonia Cohen. And then after Sonia will be Mary DeSluver, I think this is pronounced. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sonia Cohen. I want to thank everybody for their hard work on this committee. I have been a resident in Evanston for many, many decades. 15 years ago, my husband and I bought a small old building because we wanted to age in Evanston, and we realized that we could not afford to pay all the taxes if we stayed in our single-family home. So we are, as owner-occupied, I find tenants' right to purchase and just cause disincentives to setting affordable rents because they may propose burdensome and expensive regulations. So in DC, they have the tenants' right to sell. It's been in the news. I know one of the council members has had experience with it. So I did a little research. An individual in DC can allege noncompliance and bring legal action, which can delay sales and create a great uncertainty and great expense to a landlord who might want to sell a building. Also, despite the law's attempt, most buildings aren't purchased by tenants. It's very uncommon. The other thing mentioned in this iteration here is, well, let's also allow nonprofits to purchase the buildings. I don't know how they get vetted, but I know that's just another great way to shrink our tax base. So I hope you will remove that. The other thing is the lifetime tenancy. As I've said many times, this will shift the relationship with our tenants from neighborly to one of documenting even the slightest infraction. Okay, I'm almost out of time.
You are out of time. You can say
Okay.
one last, yeah.
Well, so what I'm going to say, instead of burdening good landlords with onerous laws, craft solutions that monitor and find the bad monitors like we've witnessed today with Quadrille. Thank you.
Next up, we have Mary DeSluver, and then after Mary will be Bill Schermerhorn. And then after Bill, Joanne Schermerhorn, and that will be the end of public comment for this evening.
Good evening. My name is Mary DeSluver, and I'm celebrating my 50th anniversary as a proud owner of a two-flat in Evanston. And during these years, I've noticed that the small landlords have tried to keep their rents low. I'm a prime example. My rents have been probably 20 to 30% lower than market value for the entire 50 years. And I've become friends with my tenants over the years, which I guess you're not supposed to do when you run a business, but I've done it. And I want to explain that just cause has a really nice sound to it. We all want to have justice. But in Evanston, I don't think we've proven yet, or I find it odd that we live in Evanston where we have Northwestern and I think a pretty intellectual city here. And we haven't really done a study of the need for just cause as it's written. How many people in Evanston are evicted? We have a very low rate of evictions. How many people in Evanston are really evicted for what would be considered? What are the causes? What are the reasons other than non-payment? I haven't seen any research like that. And I saw the gentleman here before pointed to a study. I'll point to a study in New York. The Furman Center did a study and suggested that there are other ways to get around the issues of evictions that are unfair other than having something like a just cause ordinance. And what they've suggested is setting up mediation and other things because the Furman Center, which of the NYU that wrote this, indicated that in many places where just cause has been enacted, because as you know, you have to look at the other laws that are existent. Some places have rent control. We don't have rent control in Illinois. So just cause doesn't make some sense when you think about it in many ways. What's going to happen? I mean, the landlord might just raise the rent. How's that going to help? So what the Furman Center has suggested is that they worry about it actually forcing low-income people out, forcing small landlords out. And I will also point out that Seattle recently, City Council, has been doing a study to try to stop small landlords from leaving. 14% of the small landlords have left in the last 4 years. And what that means is those are the most affordable units that there are in Seattle. And they're trying to stop it. And when they did a survey of the small landlords that left, they said it was because of they couldn't cope anymore with so many regulations, including just cause. So I'd ask that we take a look at that and look at other ways to deal with unfair evictions rather than just jump and make a blanket law that might have a very negative effect on our community. Thank you very much.
Bill Skirmerhorn, yep. And then next up, Joanne Skirmerhorn. And is there anybody else that wants to make a public comment that didn't sign up? I see one. Okay. All right. So we'll have that one, and then we'll close our public comment. Sir.
Right of first refusal, I just don't understand. Even if you were to get, let's say you have a 10-unit building, you're going to get 10 tenants together. Now they're going to get together to buy a building. They're going to have documents put together so they show that they either own their unit or they own a fraction of the whole. So is it going to be turned into a condo? I mean, you're just changing the rules here. You're making decisions that don't make any sense. It's burdensome. And then, is it going to be a percentage of ownership? And the chance of getting these people together to get a loan, to me, just doesn't seem real. And you're also just going to take away the property rights of the owner who might want to get rid of it, in timely, in deals. Get blown because of time. They're going to run away from this. It seems like every time that there's a rule, like we have, these tenants, it's just going to take so much time. It's going to take the rights away. And tenants already have the right to buy. I don't understand what we're trying to solve here. They can already get together and buy something, if they want to. So that's certainly frustrating. I really think you got to think this through. And also, unintended consequences, the only reason why we would evict someone is because they're a bad actor. And the problem that we have is I had one guy that was refinishing furniture, and I said, if you don't stop, I'm not going to renew you. Okay? Because if I go to try to evict you, it's going to take me 9 months. Well, I've got the rest of the building complaining that it smells like lacquer thinner, and it's taken me 9 months to do. That's the real world. Instead, we just don't renew them, and then the problem goes away. You're going to take that right away from us? And these people that are saying that, we have bad landlords. Most of us are good landlords. We want to keep good people, and we do have good relationships with our tenants that have lasted for 20 years. So I just think you're handcuffing us, and you're making it more expensive than it needs to be. And we want to have affordable housing in this area, then let's do something that makes it affordable. Give us incentives to make it affordable, and we'll work with you, and we'll get this job done. And it's a beautiful community, and we're going to keep it going. Thank you for your time.
Joanne Skirmerhorn.
My brother spoke. I don't need to.
Okay. You were the only one that exercised that tonight. Thank you. Yes, one more.
You could give me a quick second because I'm a little tall. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I want to begin with a story. A tenant's lease is up for renewal in a few months. She pays on time. She causes no problems. In January, during sub-zero temperatures, her heat goes out. She emails her landlord. Someone eventually drops off one electric space heater, but the central heat remains broken for 5 days. She does what we advise tenants to do. She reports the issue to the city of Evanston so the housing code could be enforced. The heat is finally restored. She then asks for a partial rent refund for the days her apartment was uninhabitable. After that, her landlord goes silent. ignores her emails. At renewal, she receives notice. Schermerhorn will not renew her lease, nor reason given. No explanation, just displacement. This story has not happened yet, but without just cause, it will happen to me in October. My name is Dr. Claudia Garcia Rojas. I'm a Northwestern University scholar. I live in the 3rd Ward. I know how much courage it takes to report violations and the punishment you endure in the aftermath. And I know how easily silence can be enforced when a landlord holds the power to simply decline a renewal. Just cause is about power, but it also is about shame. Right now, there is no shame built into a system that allows landlords to ignore repair requests, to squeeze tenants to absorb the cost of negligence, and then to quietly remove them at renewal when they assert their rights. There is no accountability in a structure that permits reasonless displacement. Because when landlords use the term bad or disruptive tenants, what they mean is tenants like myself, who speak up and assert their rights and refuse to be ignored. I am asking that we have shame. Shame in allowing exploitation to hide behind non-renewal. Shame in allowing tenants to be punished for doing exactly what the city tells them to do, report unsafe conditions. Shame on policies that prioritize property over people. Shame will be measured, not in words, but in the routes we allow to be taken from people who follow the rules. Thank you.
That will, and that will end. That will. If we can have order and please, if we can have order. If we can have order in the chamber, y'all can debate right outside of those doors for as long as the meeting is happening. Thank you. All right, so next up we have somebody can move the minutes, I believe is the next thing we need to do.
Is committee member King online?
Is
member
King online now?
I think he might.
No? Okay.
No.
We thought he would be, but he.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know there was a possibility. Just
right.
wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Somebody can move approval of our HCDC minutes
I will
from
move
January 20th.
Approval of meeting minutes from January 20th, 2026.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
It's seconded. Any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving these minutes say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? All right, we have approved minutes. Next up, if somebody can move Housing for All recommendation for action, item 5A.
I will move item 5A, Housing for All recommendations.
All right, that's been moved. Is there a second?
Second, I'll second.
It has been seconded, and I am going to, just for the sake of time, I'm actually probably going to play the role of staff real quick and just read through. I want to read through this opening first, and then if you have anything you want to add, because I think y'all did a good job of setting this up. So there's a list of potential updates. They're attached based on committee and public feedback received at January 14th meeting or emailed by February 11th. Each item is intended to be specific enough to provide staff with clear direction so updates can be made before the plan travels to City Council. What this means is we would prefer not to wordsmith this evening. Let's just give some general direction about what we would like to see advance to council, and then staff will work in between now and the council meeting to find language that's suitable, and obviously we can still make changes once it gets to council. Committee members will have the opportunity to pull any items off the list for further discussion. The list is included in the packet. What I see is items 1 through 20 right now on the consent list. Consent items remaining on the list will be voted on as a package. Consent items pulled from the list may be discussed by the committee, followed by a vote. So the first thing we'll do is I'll ask what items committee members want to be pulled. So we'll do that first. And then items for discussion, the following topics were discussed at the January 20th meeting, and due to a lack of consent, should be discussed to direct staff whether they should remain as is be modified or removed from the plan. Those items are, one is strengthen renter protections, just cause. The second is implement tenant and community right to purchase program. And then the third, explore a transfer of development rights program. Those will automatically be moved to discussion. You don't need to remove those. Those are not on the consent agenda, I believe. And so those will be discussed. Committee members can come prepared with additional items for consideration at the meeting. Similar to consent items pulled from the list, these items will be discussed and followed by a vote. I'm going to do what Mayor Biss does. I would ask that you reduce those to writing so that all committee members have it in writing, so that staff has it in writing. And then also we might even be able to put it up on the screen so that people who are participating this evening in the audience can see it as well. And next steps following the meeting, staff will start work updating the plan based on items approved by the committee. Housing for All is tentatively scheduled to appear before City Council in April. The updated plan will be shared with the public at least 1 week prior to the City Council meeting. Have I missed anything, or are we good to get rolling? Okay. So we're going to start off with pulling consent items, but I have Councilmember Isles.
I have a comment.
Yes.
So I feel uncomfortable voting on the consent items because they're pretty vague, and I don't know what I'm voting on. And so would staff be willing to come up, like I don't need a detailed explanation of all 20 things, but just some more of a clue than the little snippet that we have here, so that hopefully we can move through them quickly. Some of them are so opaque that
Are there any where there's enough detail to where you would be comfortable moving them forward? Because I would say anything that you want to discuss, just pull it. And if it ends up being most of all of them, that's just what it is.
Yeah. How does staff feel about it?
We're also happy to provide comment if there are particular ones you have questions on.
There are some
before
that
the
I think
consent.
need a slightly deeper dive, but some of them are,
So what I would prefer to do is pull it. And it'll just be a brief discussion, or it'll be a longer discussion. So what items?
I want to pull 12.
All right, so we got.
Let's start there.
We got 12. I'm trying to find my notes because I had a few. You can just shout it out and I'll write it down.
Mr. Chair, I'd move I would pull item 4, 5, and 19, please.
4, 5, and 19. I'm pulling 13 and 14. Any others?
13 and 14?
Yes. Any others? All right, so let's see. So if somebody could then move everything, the consent agenda minus 12, 4, 5, 19, 13, and 14.
So, Mr. Chair, I will move the consent agenda minus the following items 4, 5, 12, 13, 14, and 19.
All right, it's been seconded. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions, any nays? All right, so we'll start with, let's actually start with, let's start with 1.1A, strengthen renter protections, just cause. Let's just try to, knock those out first, and then we'll go to the others. Who would like to open Councilman Rogers?
Actually, if I could recommend that we go through the items that were pulled first, because some of these might just need clarification.
Okay, let's do that. All right.
So that'll be a quicker way of doing it.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's start with if somebody wants to discuss 4. So 4 was add more specific funding and investment goals.
So this is one I had requested to be pulled.
Yeah, Councilman Rogers.
Yeah. I just want to know from staff, kind of like how much are we committing ourselves here when we're just saying find funding? This is something I'm very uncomfortable with when we start putting this type of language in, because what happens then is real plans come back to us based on this language, and then we're told, oh, well, you approved this. And I don't want to be put in the position of being told I approved something when this language doesn't really tell me that I am approving something or not approving something. So if staff could just kind of briefly talk to exactly what this is trying to accomplish, or what your vision for it is, I guess.
And before this was something that was recommended by, it just says public, so not staff. So what is that? How did you receive this idea?
Excuse me, Uri Pachter, Senior Housing Planner. The items listed as public were received through the same means as HCDC, either through written or verbal comment at the last meeting or submitted by February 11th previously. And there is no, staff is playing a neutral role here in just providing that information. That was the level that we received, and there was enough support for something of that sort that we wanted to provide it here, recognizing that if consent isn't the right space, it can be moved over to a discussion and provide greater specificity.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel kind of uncomfortable when it just says add specific funding and investment goals without it being tied to anything in particular. Is it just like we need to find a bunch more money for everything involved here?
Staff's understanding was that it was related more not in the initiative portion of the plan, but more in the goals section of the plan that spoke to funding goals, investment goals in that capacity. And it is up to you to provide what level of detail, if any, you would want to be modified.
And we can leave this off too, like this, because to a certain extent, I think this shows up in other areas anyway, so we can leave this off and move on to the next one. We don't have to add this.
I mean, I'm fine not adding it. I don't know how everybody else.
I'm fine with that as well. I pulled it off. I had it on my list to pull off as well. So
Yeah,
unless somebody wants to advocate for it, then
No,
we should
I
just
think
leave
it makes sense. Like, I mean, we already have it's really hard because this is such in the beginning stages of some of these programs. Like, we do know that something like rental assistance is $3 signs. But what is that number specifically? And that also can shift based on, if we had unlimited money, we could do unlimited programs. So when we find which specific, populations we want to help with these specific programs, we'll have a much greater understanding of what the actual number will be. So I'm fine with pulling this off. But it is something that probably when we get 6 to 9 months in, we'll have a better idea. And I think it is smart to eventually figure out how do we pay for this. But I don't think we can set those numbers now either. So.
All right. We're going to move into number 5. I don't think we need to necessarily vote any of this up or down. We'll just, at the end, we'll vote to move things forward, but we can just kind of leave 4 where it's at. So 5 was also pulled. It says remove all exploratory language and shift to action language. That was also provided by a member of the public.
Mr. Chair, I also have pulled this off. This is kind of going against the policies that we had for moving through the comp plan, where we saw ourselves going from things that were very action to more exploratory, because we don't know costs involved, we don't know impacts involved, and to just automatically say everything in here becomes actionable immediately is problematic for me. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I pulled 5 as well. I mean, I think even exploring, pursuing, I think those are actions as long as there's clear direction about how those things should be explored or pursued. So I also pulled it for that reason. Does anybody want to advocate for to move 5 forward? All right. Next one we have number 12. Update language to incorporate a circuit breaker program with targeted program requirements.
So I pulled that one. It seems like explore local property tax relief. So 1.2E is the right spot for the circuit breaker program. My sort of goal to have that come before the committee last month was to incorporate it into the overall plan instead of have it as a sort of side pilot project. I'm just, like, this is an example of what does that language look like? Like, I just want more detail than that one sentence.
Councilmember Rogers, are you going to speak to this? Or?
I will, but Councilmember Harakaris beat me, so.
Oh, I didn't even see.
I was
Sorry,
quick on
Councilmember
that.
Hedekatis, I didn't see the light.
So, committee member Antamari had sent a pretty thorough email, kind of, digging into the circuit breaker program idea. I think one of her really key points is like we have to be really targeted to how we do these program requirements. And I think and so when I look at this is kind of me looking at it in combination with her email. I think if we move this forward, I think it should have more targeted requirements around who we're trying to help, rather than just everyone who I think we cast way too wide of a net initially, or where it was the way it was proposed to us, and I think this language makes sense.
Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you. Question for staff. So last time we had made a motion which failed, so a negative recommendation to move forward. Is there language that is moving forward to City Council at this time? And if so, how detailed is that? Looks like Ms. Robertson-Young is going to be addressing that.
Good evening, Chair Burns, members of the committee. We are working on that language right now, and the current plan is for that to appear before council at its March 9th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I feel more comfortable with council at this point deciding how and if to work it into the strategic housing plan. I personally think for now, just having explore local property tax relief is fine. My issue is that the circuit breaker program, as I understand it, is really in some ways not consistent with what we've been presented here. Also, I think by the time we all provide our feedback, is going to be even more different than the way I've seen circuit breaker programs expressed in other places. And so I think it's the circuit breaker part that I think I just don't want to create confusion. But personally, I support property tax relief. I have a lot of ideas that I'm going to bring to council about how I believe that program should be administered and what the different guidelines have been. I appreciate Member Tamara for providing that email. And so I think I think property tax relief is fine for now. Let's allow council, who I believe is going to hear, is going to, I mean, if we move strategic housing forward, they'll be considering strategic housing. We've already moved the circuit breaker program forward to council, so they're going to be considering it. I would like to allow council to decide, again, if and how it's incorporated into the strategic housing plan, or if it's approved as just a standalone, program that we advance outside of, the strategic housing plan. So that's kind of where I'm at. I see you doing this. You want to?
Yeah, I was going to follow up.
Yeah, Councilman Rogers.
Yeah, so I think it's fine to include the language as it is here in this draft of the strategic housing plan, because I think there are going to be those discussions at council. And if there is a will for council to sort of roll it back into this or hold it or whatever at council until the whole strategic housing plan makes it there, I think that's perfectly fine. Or council may just say, no, we don't like this at all, and kick it back to us, which kind of starts the whole process over. But at least we're looking at it still, because I don't know that anyone is opposed to the concept. It's more the details of the concept.
Just so we're clear, what language do you support including in the strategic
I
housing
support
plan?
the language that is here right now.
What's being proposed, I guess, or what's there? So what's there is explore local property tax relief, and then there's, I think, language being proposed under 12. You're saying the proposed language?
Councilmember Rogers, can you clarify when you say here, do you mean in the Housing for All plan currently or as proposed in item 12 to add to it?
So I guess what I'm not fully understanding is what is item 12? What language are we adding?
So 12, it says update language to incorporate a circuit breaker program with targeted program requirements.
So a straightforward way that this likely would happen is somewhere in there'd be a clause that would say, for example, or including a circuit breaker program with targeted program requirements. It would not go into any more detail given the level of detail.
And what's there now is explore local property tax relief, correct? Yeah.
So for some clarification.
Member and Tamara.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
For some clarification, I think where I was getting at with my comment was to have it be included within the basket of options, not necessarily pulled out as like a spotlight example within the plan itself. Did I misunderstand the use of it?
And if I could respond quickly, so I think we've already achieved that in that the last meeting we had, or not even, so the circuit breaker program, as we discussed at the last meeting, is already advancing to council and will appear on, do we have a date yet? On the March 9th City Council meeting.
So you're talking about just adding it as like one of the examples that you already have in there because there's so many other examples and so that we can decide how we're going to move forward and evaluate it amongst all of the examples underneath that strategy itself.
Excuse me, as proposed, it would not be like letter F, a new initiative, but it would be in the paragraph below it as one of the ways that local property tax relief can be explored and implemented. If you're interested in it being something else or we misunderstood, please correct that.
Same page now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Rogers.
I mean, I think we're fine not to include this particular language specifically because this is moving forward to council and will be discussed on its own. And so maybe when this moves to council, this becomes incorporated back in as something specific or as an example or whatever. So I don't know that we need to address it right here, right now, because we don't know what council's discussion is going to be. So they may include it as an item F, or they may just roll it into as, for example.
Okay, member and Tamara is saying you are fine with that, so we're gonna not move the proposed language forward. We'll keep that as is. All right, next up we have number 13, add new initiative, explore first-time homeowner program focused on households with Evanston roots. I think I pulled this because if we're going to do this, I think framing it as a residency requirement is more appropriate than Evanston roots, and I think easier is what you would actually have that's the type of language you'd have in a program like this. So that was it. I just wanted to.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, make that little note.
Kind of similar to how we have like preferred, inclusionary housing applications with, folks that are like living, working here. But that's kind of similar because it is hard to enforce that with just, Evanston roots.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that was it. As you're working on language, I think everybody's cool with moving that forward. So as we're working on language, just find language that we can actually enforce residency requirements, working here, et cetera, that type of language. All right. So everybody, I don't know how we should actually handle that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you comfortable with the way this is reframed here, focused on Evanston households instead of Evanston roots? Is that what you're getting at?
No, because I think by roots, he's saying people that have lived or worked in Evanston for a while.
I mean, it could be also, because it's similar to like when they have the applications for like geometry construction, there are folks who are working here. They're not necessarily a Evanston household at that point. So I think this would be something that we'd want, to be open to like people who work at the high school and D65. And so, that's how I kind of.
When I hear roots, though, I think length of time, like a longer length of time. So that's another reason why I said the residency requirement, because I filled out different things where it required, like in Illinois, residency required. You had to have lived in Illinois for X amount of years. So I didn't know if that's what you were getting at with roots or something else.
In the spirit of maybe not designing the program as part of the plan, could we just add an initiative explore first-time homebuyer program, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how that program is going to play out?
Okay.
Does that work?
That works.
And
Everybody
then I would
good with
recommend
that?
a vote on this item so
That's
that
what
we
I was
can
going to
add
say.
it.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're on 13. We're going to vote. Do we need to move this 13 separately? Should we do it that way? Okay. So somebody move 13 then, and then this will be
I'll
the
move
advance
approval
it. Go ahead.
of initiative number 13 with the proposed language change shown on the big screen.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays, any abstentions? All right. Next up, we have 14, update language to focus on long-term affordability and not limiting the pathways to shared equity, housing, or land trusts. I know we had a conversation about this. I don't necessarily remember saying it in this way because I want to, if anything, emphasize land trusts. As long as land trusts are already in here somewhere, I'm fine just leaving this alone, not moving it forward, as long as land trusts appear somewhere else. Does it?
Currently, there are two initiatives that speak to long-term affordability explicitly. One's with land trusts and one's through shared equity homeownership. The move here would to make it even clearer that any other methods and pathways to achieve long-term affordability beyond land trusts and shared equity homeownership are of interest. So it would not demote land trusts, but however you want to advance, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should obviously be doing that as a practice anyway, but I mean, with that explanation, I would support it, but just wanted to make sure we wouldn't be demoting, as you put it, or de-emphasizing land trusts, because I think those are important. All right, so if somebody wants to, does everybody, you understand the explanation? If you want to move this, and we'll.
I would move that item 19,
14.
which is initiative 41A, implement external housing funding strategy, to add language highlighting how additional funding would enable the city to be entrepreneurial I'm sorry, I'm around.
I think you're on the wrong, we're on 14. Yeah.
14, I've jumped ahead a page. 14, which would be initiative 21, or 2.1B and C, facilitate long-term affordability through land trust and shared equity homeownership, to update the language to focus on long-term affordability and not limiting the pathways to shared equity housing or land trusts.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor of move this forward, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, those were all the items that were pulled.
Nope, I pulled item 19.
Did you pull 19? Okay, I didn't catch that.
I was one page ahead of you.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, so we got 19, add language highlighting how additional funding would enable the city to be entrepreneurial regarding site control.
So my question is, Councilmember Burns, I see that this is listed for you, so I'd just like an explanation as to what the intent is for this.
Yeah, I think for me, site control in a lot of respects is tied in some ways to the land trust program and in some ways can operate outside of it. But the every example that I'm aware of our land trust came from property that the city owned. And so the only land trust that operates currently, it wasn't always the case. There used to be, to my understanding, at least one other land trust. But right now it's just Community Partners for Affordable Housing. They don't have a bunch of money like laying around to buy property to do what they do. The only way that they're able to expand the land trust property that they have in any community, because they operate in Evanston but also in Lake County, is through partnerships with the city. Like the cities are the ones that provide either the land or the money to get the land. And then sometimes they're able to, there was an example even in Evanston where I think actually Open Communities won a settlement and used some of that settlement money to help them rehab a home that the city had purchased on Hovland in order to turn into a land trust home ownership, affordable home. So they get funding that way as well. And so, again, site control is an important aspect of expanding the amount of land trust properties that we have in the community. So whether we tie it to that or have it as a kind of standalone item, I want people to understand that that's an important aspect of, I think the same is even true on Howard. I mean, that's how we were able to, I think, transform or improve, however you want to look at it. The retail opportunities on Howard was through the city really stepping up and leveraging its TIF funds in that example to buy property and then to work out deals with other entrepreneurs. So that's where that's coming from.
All right, I just want to speak to that briefly.
Yeah, please.
I don't want the city to get into the practice of being a real estate broker. This is something that we've kind of talked about with 801 Main, 720 or 739 Howard, which was purchased for the intent of, like, we have a vision for this, we want to create something here. I know there's a discussion about some work at Grace Lutheran with their parking lot. And so I just want to be very careful and not be giving my consent that the city should become a landlord agent, or not, I'm sorry, a real estate agent, where we are purchasing land and then deciding who goes there or what goes there in such a way that we are interfering into the marketplace as it is. That we are, I would like us to be kind of the last resort instead of the first actor who steps up to purchase properties.
And I would support that type of language. I mean, all the examples that I have where, again, when I say entrepreneur, you're looking for opportunities that make sense. So, for example, and also I think I just fundamentally disagree. I think one of the main reasons that we have issues in housing is because it's a for-profit endeavor. So I don't think we can just sit back and let the market do whatever it wants if we want affordable housing. Now, if we want things to continue to express themselves as they have, well, we'll get what we get, which in a valuable place like Evanston that has a high demand, everybody wants to live in Evanston. There's no part of Evanston that people wouldn't want to live or build on. It just drives the cost up. So, but I think the examples that I can provide are Jackson Emerson is a good example. I'll use that one. If we would not have done anything, it would have turned into luxury townhomes. And then a percentage of that, or luxury rentals, a percentage of that would have been affordable based on our inclusionary housing ordinance, but that's it. It would have been at the time capped at 10% affordable housing likely at 60% AMI. I can guarantee, because we're going to start the process there soon, because the city got involved, we're going to get way more than 10% affordable. It may still be mixed income, right? I'm not saying it's going to be 100% affordable housing. We'll get way more than 10%. I think also because of the way we're doing it, we'll have more support by the local neighbors and community members as well. I can go on and on. I mean, Hovland, I'll give one more example. There was a fire there, negligent. There was a fire there. The property was bank owned. The market wasn't really moving on it. They didn't do anything with it. It sat that way for a long time, boarded up. We came in, purchased it. Now if you go down Hovland right now, middle of the block on the west side of the street, you'll see that it's being worked on, right, for the first time in probably over a decade. And there'll be an Evanston resident that's able to purchase that home affordably. That would not be happening but for the city stepping up, paying the $70,000 or whatever it was to buy the home. So entrepreneurial is looking for the right type of opportunities to get involved. There are other examples where it might not be the right opportunity. I think there was, one that we talked about in the 4-4 where we decided, that's probably a better thing. We probably just need to sell that and get rid of it. And so I'm open to being flexible, but I do think the city can continue to play a role in making sure that we get the affordable housing that everybody seems to understand that we need.
And I'm not arguing against the city being involved. I have a problem with the city being the financing behind that, because that is us putting our hand on the market in a way that is not fair to somebody else. Who do we decide whose property we buy, whose property we don't buy? is that just a random thing? I mean, we've purchased we've purchased properties with TIFs, which is slightly different because that is indeed not just from our general fund or something like that, or an affordable housing fund. But we also should not be in the process of stepping in before the market has had an opportunity to step in. And if we do want to do that, we can partner with somebody, but we shouldn't finance and be the one purchasing property and then selling that property out. We do this somewhat with the ETHS housing, where we help work with them. We do in that case fund, but that's a very specific niche market that we're dealing with there. And when you start doing that with other developers, I have Cleason in my particular ward that's currently looking at redevelopment. I would never think of asking the city to put money into that and purchase a $6 million property. I'm working with developers and trying to identify developers who will put in housing that is affordable, that is kind of serving a niche market of senior affordability. And I'm taking grief from it from my residents. Believe me, I'm hearing about it. But the thing is, I feel that that is the appropriate way for the city to move forward, not with us taking taxpayer dollars, purchasing property, and then looking for someone who will develop exactly what we want, because that also puts developers in a difficult position, because so many times we end up with, here's our dream plan, and the developers say, this can't be built. Or, we don't make money off of this. So I think we have to be very careful about stepping into this. And I have no problem with us partnering with people in terms of providing technical expertise, in terms of, hey, you need a zoning change underlying here, let's look at that, those sorts of things. But I have a real problem when we start financing things.
I think, if I could just respond to this. So I think the difference is where we may disagree is I believe in, it's like yes and. So I think there are examples. The example you provided is that particular property, Clesson Wholesale, has never been on the market, or if it has, it was a long time ago. Jackson Emerson was on the market. Hoveland was on the market, and it didn't sell. Right. So, and it was people were reaching out saying, hey, look, we're interested, because you probably get this in your ward as well. I think we all do. When somebody's interested in something, especially if it's not by right, they'll start reaching out, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. But it had been on the market for a while. It was going to be put back on the market, and there was some indication by the market on how people were going to use it, which was, we know in Evanston, all new development is going to be luxury of some type, whether it's for sale or rental. And so I think where I disagree is that I think there are going to be times in that example, even, we allowed a lot of time for the market to express itself. It did eventually, and we decided that we wanted to go in another direction. The example that you're providing of, we want something that's not feasible, and I think you're talking about an example in a ward I won't name. Well, we didn't do that the right way. If you look at the way we're approaching Jackson and Emerson, like we literally said, and I can send you the it's not really an RFP, but the RFP where it says, in conjunction with the urban design guidelines, which is what we're creating for Jackson and Emerson, we also want a feasibility study, right, to determine what type of development would be feasible on the site. So there's a way to address everything you're saying. What I'm referring to is, I think, very different than some of the examples you provided. But we also just may disagree. I think the city is the only one in a position, other than like the federal government, but I think they're already expressing themselves through the Housing Choice Voucher Program and the Light Tech Program. I don't think they're going to do anything else. I hope they do, but I think they're already expressing how they intend to help with this housing issue. And so I think other than the state and the federal government, we're the only other people that have an interest in creating affordable housing and honestly have the ability to do it. If you listen to even the property owners today, they said, like, yeah, we're down for affordable housing. We need incentives, though. Incentives is probably some subsidy or some, you do this, we do this. So I do think the city needs to continue to play a role in advancing our affordable housing goals. I don't think we should take on every opportunity, nor have we, but we may just disagree on that. Yeah.
I'll let staff jump in, but then I do want to respond real briefly.
Just wanted to point out that separate from differences in strategy that's being discussed, that in this specific recommendation or potential modification. It's listed under the external housing funding strategy. So this language would come in a section that would be based on dollars coming from external sources, not from, it would be placed in the general fund or somewhere temporarily, but it would be external non-taxpayer dollars. And I just want to point that out as one caveat and difference from a larger overall strategy.
And I'm fine if that's the approach we go. But that's not the way this always has been interpreted by this council. And I think that to respond to Councilmember Burns just briefly, if people can't build affordable housing in Evanston, then we should be looking at how do we create the opportunities for that to happen. And before anybody says the comprehensive plan does that, I will argue that till my dying day, that it does not create the opportunities for affordable housing. It creates the opportunity for missing middle, which is not the same as affordable housing all the time. So I'm willing to kind of just end it here because I think we have just a difference of opinion on some of this. But if we can find federal grants, state grants, county grants, a private foundation that wants to do this, I have no problem with that. I have a problem with taxpayer dollars purchasing properties over and over again for redevelopment.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this is not utilizing taxpayer dollars. This is finding external funding sources to support the city's ability to I guess, achieve site control, if that makes sense.
All right.
So that's where this change would occur in the paragraph below the strategy, which is implement external housing funding strategy.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we need a motion to move this forward. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with it
Okay.
as long as it is external and not taking any money out of the Evanston coffers, but just a pass-through.
All right, we need a motion to move this forward.
I got to find my spot here again. I will move the initiative the item 19, add language highlighting how additional funding would enable city to be entrepreneurial regarding site control.
Second.
All right, any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions, any nays? All right, those are all our consent agenda items, I believe.
So do we have to?
I'm going to go back up to the 3, but.
I was going to say, we probably.
No, I'm going there now. Okay. But 19 was the last on the consent agenda. These were not on the consent agenda, so we're going to handle these separately.
No, my question is, do we have to, I mean, we don't, do we just let consent agenda items hang, or do we actually vote to not forward them?
Do we want to vote on all of them at once, or I thought we already moved each one forward individually?
You voted on the items on the consent agenda that were not pulled already. There was a motion made on that. And then you individually voted to incorporate the items that you went through. We do not need a vote or motion on items that you decided not to
Right,
advance.
that was my question.
Oh, that was your question. Yeah,
That was my
no,
question.
yeah, no, I don't.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay, so let's. So the first one, Initiative 1.1A, strengthen renter protections, just cause. Let's just start the discussion, and then we can make a motion, figure out what our motion is going to be. Councilmember Hedekatis was first.
Yeah. I will agree with one of the things that I heard from a lot of the housing providers. I really also don't like the name Just Cause. I think that's started a lot of confusion when this came around the first time. I think we've heard, and this is like this kind of the second time we've had a little bit of discussion about this. About a year ago, we had folks from the Albion come talking about retaliation. And this is really, when we talk about housing stability, I think we all benefit as a community if people have stable housing. When you have a threat of retaliation and non-renewal, I think that's real. I think that's happens more often than we think. I think it's a small minority of housing providers do that. Many of them who don't show up here. So I think, framing this, I will repeat, last year I talked about this. I don't think we should be enforcing this on owner-occupied 2 flats, you're sharing your home, right? But I think, and I've had discussion with some of you housing providers before, and all of you said, we don't do, the bad actors, they do that, we don't do that. So I wish we could have this discussion about what retaliatory non-renewal looks like, because I think a lot of the examples that were brought tonight, those are bad tenants. No one wants housing providers to renew the lease for a bad tenant that's violating their lease. And I personally don't want it to be an overburdensome how we prove that, they are violating their lease. There are really good housing providers that I've sat down with and talked it through. And once we had the discussion that no one wants bad tenants, housing providers, people living in your buildings, they don't want the guy refinishing furniture and making noise. And that should be something as simple as a courtesy, hey, we're not renewing your lease, you have to go. We don't want to overcomplicate this, but I think what's happening is a lot of you all who are coming here to talk about just cause and how terrible it is, you guys are helping out the bad actors. The bad actors who do this stuff aren't here. They're not coming up and saying this is a tool, this is how I raise rents, this is how I kick people out. So if we have this discussion, I think it's a valid discussion, what does and I would want to almost change the just cause, but how do we prevent this retaliatory non-renewal? Because you all, the housing providers, need to be able to non-renew your bad tenants. And I think there are a lot of people who, I can speak from experience, even just a couple weeks ago, I had someone reach out because of horrific, conditions in an apartment that their elderly parents were in. And we have to do something to police the bad actors, and those bad actors are not here. And so I think this is a discussion we need to have, and I'd love to talk through because I know that evictions are really expensive, and non-renewals are a lot easier than an eviction. And I don't want to burden people with over complication of tracking everything that happens. But if tenants are bad, you should be able to non-renew. And I think we can do that in a well-written ordinance. So I think it's something we really need to explore.
Member Zalomi.
Well, considering the pros and cons of just cause we've heard tonight, I want to take it out because it's something that needs a lot more discussion. And I think before it's included in any housing plan, a lot of this needs to get worked out. Now, and I feel on the next one of right of first refusal, it just makes my hair stand on end. And as I'm a retired realtor, but as a landlord, there is not, as I've said many times, there is nothing to prevent a landlord selling to his tenants now. And the city does not need to get involved and to delay something 3 months. I just see lawsuits coming down the pike on that.
Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you. I've made no secret of my issues with just cause on a couple different grounds. Number one, correct me if I'm wrong, staff. If there's retaliatory action taken against the tenant, is that not covered under the RLTO?
It is, yes.
All right, so that's already been addressed. Number two, I have concerns as someone who represents a ward. I know at least 3 housing providers from the 8th Ward were here, and I'm sorry if I'm missing any. Those just happen to be the 3 that I know. if we make cumbersome problems for these people, they will sell. And who are they selling to? Not another small landlord. They're selling to someone like Quadrell. And we have heard lots of testimony tonight from people complaining about Quadrell, who is a corporate landlord, who says they just violate the RLTO. They pay no attention to it. So we can put just cause in. They're just going to ignore that. They're bad actors all around. I have a problem with that. I have some issues with, and I discussed this with MTO while I was in the campaign trail, because we talked about this. As a condominium owner, we have people who rent in the condominium. We have very specific and exclusive rules about who can rent, how long they can rent, under what terms, those sorts of things. And I specifically asked the question. I said, we have a situation where we say you can only rent for 3 out of any 5-year period. And if a homeowner came to us, one of our unit owners, and said, I want to rent for a 4th year, or their tenant came and said, I want to rent for a 4th year, and that homeowner came to us as the condominium association and said, we said no, I said, is that just cause? And I was told, yes, it is. So you're telling someone that they can't move into their own home without triggering just cause. How does this work in that sort of a situation? Because we say 2 flats, owner occupied, does that cover off on a condominium? And if the owner wants to do it, but the condominium association doesn't let them do it, then is the condominium association the one who is prohibiting this from happening? Which isn't the homeowner, it's the homeowners association. So I think there's a lot of things that just have to be discussed yet on this. And I do not feel moving this forward right now is the right thing to do. I think there are already things that are covered in RLTO. I think this is just icing on the cake. We aren't enforcing the RLTO from what I'm hearing tonight. So why create a new policy that we don't enforce? We did this with Fair Work Week, and I'm just going to throw that one out here. We created an entire policy. In the first month after I was elected, someone came to me and said, my employer is violating Fair Work Week. What's my recourse? I called our law department. They said, we never put remedies in for this stuff. So they're telling someone who makes $7.25 to $10 an hour, yeah, your employer is messing with you, go sue them. We've created the law, but you're responsible now for dealing with that. And I feel that's what we're doing with a lot of the tenants who are coming here tonight, is we've created an RLTO, and the city is not holding up its end of the deal on enforcing that law to do something about those landlords. And I know, Councilmember Isles, I see you down there, and I'm not pointing at you. I know you are trying. It is difficult to do. It is a problem. But I don't think that creating another rule that the bad actors are just going to violate, and the city doesn't have the means to quickly activate a remedy for someone, is beneficial to anyone. So I don't feel comfortable moving just cause forward at this point.
Councilman Riles.
So I think it's pretty obvious we're going to have a discussion about just cause. We're already having a discussion about just cause, and we're going to continue to have a discussion about just cause. I think it's important as it progresses that we don't catch small landlords in that net. And so there needs to be provisions that prevent that. But you're right, Quadrell is running amok in the 3rd Ward. There's multiple buildings. It might be the most frustrating thing that I've come across as a new council member is the inability to make Quadrell play by the rules. And we've tried a few things. The tenants unions are doing a fantastic job of organizing themselves. MTO is providing them support. I've attended press conferences on their behalf. We've talked to city staff. City staff has written a letter outlining the violations to RLTO. And it looks like progress is being made, and then sort of like Lucy in the football, it gets pulled away. And so I'm glad that they're coming. I hope they come to city council as well. It's an issue that's not going away. But that doesn't mean I'm not willing to explore other things that might hold a bad actor accountable. So I'm not interested in catching the landlords that we see here tonight in just cause, but I am very interested in catching corporate landlords like Quadrell in that kind of a law. So I do think that it's pretty clear that this is a discussion we need to have. I don't mind that it's included in the strategic housing plan. This is a plan that we're going to be looking at for guidance over the next 10 years or so. Is that about the time frame of one of these plans? Is about a decade. And so I definitely think it can be there. We can have a discussion, I think, about what that language looks like and how aggressive that language is, but I think we definitely need to explore just cause and what that would look like. I feel very differently about tenant right to purchase. I do not see how.
Well, let's hold off on that. I think that's the that's the next one. So let's stay on just cause. Liz.
I want to kind of circle back to what we discussed earlier with the circuit breaker of not trying to solve how we strengthen renter protections within the plan, but acknowledge the fact that we need to work as a committee and as a city to strengthen rental protections. So on the screen up here, and let me know if you need me to make this a little bit bigger.
Could you please?
Yes,
for those of us in the
absolutely.
back of the
I'm right there with you in terms of probably need some glasses. I want to acknowledge that as part of your consent agenda, you've already voted to add language regarding the right to counsel to this initiative, which, again, we're talking about the paragraph that follows underneath that references just cause. It's not a standalone initiative. The initiative here is to strengthen renter protections. So you've acknowledge wanting to add language regarding the right to counsel, add language regarding expanding tenant education and outreach. One opportunity to, again, not specify just cause would be to strike that term from the paragraph that follows that initiative. You could also then just sum it up with, wanting to reduce risk to residents being displaced for arbitrary or unjust reasons without restricting housing providers in extenuating circumstances. So again, this gives the ability to continue exploring how you can identify or come up with policies that would help strengthen renter protections and promote housing stability, but again, not solving for how that would be done at this moment. Open to how we can further craft this paragraph, but based on the discussion here tonight, it seems like being very specific in the language at this time is maybe not the course that many of you are looking to go.
I think that's a good way to go, and I can support that. The problem is when you include terms like just cause, that's a very spelled out program that has already been debated. It's in the public, things like that. So we kind of know when you say just cause, what exactly you're talking about there. And I don't think there's anybody up here, I hope there's nobody up here who does not want to strengthen renter protections and give housing stability. And I would argue that the housing providers are included in that, because the more stable their tenants are, the more stable their businesses are. It's always easier to keep someone than to have to find a replacement. So I think that goes a long way to making everybody happy so that we can have those discussions without necessarily putting an intent in here that we all know what that language really is talking about specifically and specific policies.
So if I could chime in on this, I think I either support just saying just cause, or I think to Councilmember Hedekata's part, like the retaliatory non-lease renewals, that type of language might be interesting. I can go on a whole thing about that. That's not that's way oversimplified, but we could talk more about that offline. But even with just cause, like the whole point of just cause, and honestly, the reason why I think some landlords are concerned is that the way it's enforced, like most everything, is the courts. Like any dispute ultimately is going to be addressed by the circuit court. The difference in just cause is like if they refuse to leave, you cannot just kick somebody out, right? You cannot just put somebody's stuff in the street. So even with a non-lease renewal, which property owners know, even please, if I can, even non-lease renewals end up in court if the tenant refuses to leave. Heads are shaking. That's how it works. You can't just kick somebody out. What they're concerned about, which is a valid concern, is if somebody says, "Well, no, I think this is this isn't a just cause." Let's say we adopt a just cause or call it whatever. They say, "No, I don't think this is a just cause reason. I'm not going to leave." Right? Even if their lease isn't renewed, they have their day in court. And then questions of right to counsel come up as well, which is also in here. I think that was on the consent agenda, and we moved that forward. Right. So now right to counsel comes in. Now they have a Megan McClung at Moran Center, or somebody that can support them, that can defend their right to stay, right, if it wasn't done correctly. So that with just cause, that is built in. It's not like it's just, there's no, and even the situation with Councilmember Isles, because I've had a similar situation, I think there's stuff we can do there too. I'm going to look into that because I don't even necessarily agree that there can't be anything done there. We've been very close at the city, like taking legal action as a city against property owners.
We're
why
definitely
that hasn't
not done.
Yeah, I was going to say why that hasn't been pursued. I don't necessarily understand, but there's probably a lot I'm missing. So I want to talk to Councilmember Isles on that. But certainly with just cause, as we discussed it, that enforcement is already built in because the tenant can just say, "I'm not leaving," which people are concerned about, and then they'd have their day in court. As I said, right to counsel could come into play if we move that forward. So and what I want to be clear, and please check the record if I'm wrong on this, let me know. Just cause was not defeated. It was, you check the record, it was removed at the prerogative of the chair. Like we never voted on to say we don't want to move just cause forward. We never had an opportunity to continue the discussion and vote on it. It never had its day. So it wasn't, if it was defeated, it wasn't defeated in the way that I believe these type of deliberative bodies should work, where it's discussed, it's voted on, it either as an advisory committee, it still moves on to council, and at council it's determined whether or not it'll live on or if it'll be denied. That's the way I think these processes should work. That did not happen. And so again, I think the simplest way to do this is, and after somebody called me, I can't remember who it is, to say, well, this says pursue it. I don't necessarily think it needs to say pursue it. I don't know if we know what we're pursuing. I'm just saying we committed to continuing discussion about just cause. It never happened. It was pulled without us agreeing to pull it or sideline it as a committee. And I want to make sure that we continue that discussion around just cause. As I said at the top of the meeting, it's not a commitment to approve it at all. It's not to approve any version of it. It's just continuing the discussion so we can talk about things that Councilman Rogers and everybody, Councilman Isles might be concerned about. Maybe we'll decide not to move. You know what? This isn't a good program. That's the last thing I want to say before we go to Councilmember Hedekata. A lot of these staff has told us a bunch of different times, like, we don't have programs yet. Like this, a lot of this is advisory. We're saying we want to explore this or look into this. We still have to build the thing. And so I just want to be clear on that. Like we don't have a land trust program, for example. We're giving general language that says that we want to see land trusts expanded or whatever the language is, but we'll still have to work on the program. So I don't necessarily support saying pursue just cause or any other language like that would make it seem like it's a done deal. I would like to continue the discussion around it. And I think we have enough support here to do that. There might be people who vote against it, but I think there's support to at least continue considering it, discussing it. I would be fine with that language, but just making sure whatever we decide to do, that it's included in just cause. Included in the strategic housing plan. Councilmember Hedekata, I think, was next, and then members Lomi.
Yeah, Councilmember Burns had a good point. We never got to fully discuss just cause up here. I mean, we started, we never actually voted. We had a mountain of work just to get through the RLTO ordinance. And as we're finding out here, if we didn't have a housing problem, we wouldn't have so much work to do. And I think all of us up here are up here because we're committed to doing this work and finding ways to make this place more affordable and more attainable for more people. I think I totally agree with Councilmember Burns that we owe our residents, especially our renters, the discussion of just cause. I would be fine with changing the language to pursue for this strategic housing plan to say pursue policies to strengthen renter protections, because I think everybody in the room can agree that there are bad actors, and we have to do something to either help police or find these folks. Unfortunately, they have very deep pockets. One thing that is in the plan is to, explore the possibility of licensing. I think we'd have more recourse if we had a licensing program. When people break the rules, we could pull their license. But I would be in support of changing this to, for the strategic housing plan to say renter protections. So.
I personally don't think renter protections is broad for me. The retaliatory lease non-renewal, whatever you said earlier, whether you feel, Councilman Rogers, it's already expressed or not, then that the language shouldn't be concerning then. But I think that is important because there was one comment, I think it was Eric, who he kind of properly understood the difference between like an eviction and what we're talking about with lease non-renewal, which I appreciate that. But some people, I think, are conflating the two. We're not talking about evictions, again, that can lead to an eviction. We're talking about lease non-renewals. And so I just want to hone it into that because I think at the heart of just cause is retaliatory lease non-renewals or lease non-renewals at no fault of the tenant, those type of things. That's the discussion that I would like to continue to have. Councilman Rogers.
But I think it's a very different discussion than what just cause is. If you're talking about retaliatory non-renewal, that's very different than I want to sell my building and I'm going to get everybody moved out so I can sell my building to convert it to condo or do whatever I want to do with it. So I think there's a lot of different things that are being conflated together here, but then we say, oh, well, we're only looking at this, when we all know there's other aspects of this. And to respond to, yes, you're getting people out who don't want to leave or feel they have the right to stay or whatever, and I'll just say, and you can all hate me for it later, there are bad actors on the renter end as well. And you when you ask housing providers to sit back and wait for the court system to take 6 months in order to remove someone, that is 6 months of income that they're losing potentially, because I can guarantee you that person probably isn't paying rent if they're squatting there. And so I think we have to look at this from both sides. And it's not just simply the non-renewal of a lease because of retaliation. There were a bunch of other things that were covered off in the original proposal of just cause. And so if we're going to discuss this, I think we need to discuss all of those things and not simplify it into just one thing, because I agree with you that no one should be retaliated against because they have pointed out bad housing, whether it's maintenance issues that have been deferred or excessive fees being charged or those sorts of things. No one should do that. But that's not all that just cause is in what just cause legislation has been in the past. Now, if we're starting fresh and saying, hey, we want to create a policy and we're not going to take what was on the table for just cause last year or 2 years ago, probably now, I'm fine with that. I'm open to that discussion. But when you start talking just cause, there were very specific policies and very specific reasons listed. And I have a problem with some of those reasons.
Yeah, and I just want them discussed. So I guess at this point, we need to figure out what type of language we want in here. As we're figuring that out, did you have a?
Well, I had my light on.
Oh, I didn't see it, Councilmember. There's no light on here. Members
it was
alone.
on, and then you said I would be after Matt, I thought. Anyway,
I didn't say that.
just said, I
Go
feel
ahead.
more
You have the floor.
comfortable with that language that takes out any mention of just cause. And that it's still, we're going to talk about protection of renters, but to put that specific stuff in, because there's so much controversy and, probably differences of opinion of what should go in it and everything, that I feel more comfortable with taking any mention of just cause out of that section.
Okay, so I think Councilmember Hedekatis was going to try to work on some language, so I'll let you decide what you want to do.
Congratulations.
I think you said you're a committee chair, so you were gonna bring just cause back would you bring it back for discussion outside of strategic housing plan?
Yeah, like I said, either way, we're going to discuss it. I don't see why saying we're going to discuss just cause in the strategic housing plan when we are going to discuss it is an issue, but it's not worth the back and forth. It's going to come to the Housing Community Development Committee. It will be discussed. I don't think having that in the strategic housing plan is an issue, but if people would rather remove it, then we can remove it.
I think if we remove it, you can get the votes on this.
I think we have the votes to move it forward, but.
You can just shove it on through if that's the way
I'm not talking about shove it. I said voting it through.
No, but
which is the way you do these processes.
We should be trying to build a consensus.
Be careful with your language, man. We vote up here. So I'm saying I think it has the votes to be moved through, and if it doesn't, that's cool too. But for the sake of this discussion, I think Councilmember Hedekatis is saying we should remove it. So if you want to make your motion, and then we can, and if you want to remove it, that's fine, and then we'll vote on that. Councilmember, I don't know who is next. Member and Tamara will go.
Thank you. So just for clarification, if we keep it in, then that just means that it is something that we will continue to discuss in order to refine it, like we will with all of the other options, correct?
Yes.
If we remove it and make it general, in essence, it sounds like we're starting at square one. Or am I
honestly, I think because I am chair, I'm going to make sure that Just Cause continues to have the discussion that was improperly, in my opinion, not allowed in the last term. I'm going to allow that continue to discussion as chair. If it was a different chair, I think they probably would want to see that there was some support, either by this body or council to continue the discussion around Just Cause. As chair, I'm going to make sure that we discuss it. Whether I support it or not in the end, I have not made that decision, but I want to continue the discussion. So it really doesn't matter at this point.
But if we remove it, there is a possibility, like, granted, you're the chair,
Yeah.
but if we remove it, then that means that not wishing anything on you, but like, let's just say something happens.
Yeah, I hear
And
you.
you're no longer chair,
Yeah.
that it could be placed to the wayside.
I think if I'm being honest, I feel like all of this, because it's advisory, can be put by the wayside. I just think that this is yeah, that's what I think this shows a clear indication of things that we want to discuss or explore or pursue, which is why usually when we discuss these items, there's usually like concern when we say implement. We're going to implement Just Cause versus like discuss it. I'm just saying discuss it. I'm not saying implement. I get the concerns about implementation because that implies like we're ready to implement. We already know we want to do this. We've researched it. I'm not saying that. We have not had a full discussion on this. I want to have a full discussion on it so we can decide if we want to implement or if we don't, if we want to move in a different direction. But at this point, at this late hour, I don't really care what we do around it. Councilmember Hedekatis, I'm going to allow you to make the motion.
I would say I move to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Isles, we had one more.
Well, I was going to say the city of Evanston will explore a just cause policy to strengthen, and if it does not, if we don't agree on the specifics, we at least have started a discussion as to how we police this the small minority of bad actors who are doing this. So, yep.
So make a motion.
So the motion is based on, I make the motion, the top paragraph, the city of Evanston will explore a just cause policy to strengthen renter protections and promote housing stability. Just cause policies restrict non-renewals and evictions to specific, well-defined circumstances such as non-payment of rent, specific lease violations, or major property rehabilitation needs. This reduces the risk of residents being displaced for arbitrary or unjust reasons without restricting housing providers in extenuating circumstances.
All right, there's the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a second. Any additional discussion? The last thing I want to say to respond to something else I heard is that the reason why I mentioned that that tenants in a lease non-renewal situation, if they decide not to leave, will have to go through the eviction process is not to say I'm advocating for that. That's what would happen. And so what I was trying to address is two things. Is one, your concern about no ramifications or there's no, what was the words you used? No enforcement mechanism. And so I was trying to explain how in a just cause scenario, again, not advocating for it beyond discussion, but saying in that scenario, it would be built into it because the tenant, if they know that, if they know about just cause, they could say, well, I'm just not going to leave. And then they would have their day in court. So I was trying to address your concerns about how something like that would be enforced, while simultaneously recognizing that that's a concern of property owners and landlords, which we've heard today. I think that's probably the chief concern, is that they probably feel like it would embolden tenants to not leave if they said, I'm not going to renew a lease. And instead they would say, no, I'm staying. And you got to go through the what can be an expensive and, long eviction process. So I wasn't advocating for anything. I was explaining both sides on kind of what their concerns are, but also kind of how it can play out for the tenant if we decided to move forward with something like that. So I just wanted to clarify that. Because I agree with Councilmember Hedikotis. Bad tenants, and any Fifth Ward landlord who has dealt with me knows this, they got to go. I mean, I'm not supporting any bad actor. What I'm trying to make sure of is that I've had landlords literally they imply that be frustrated by the fact that people are trying to exercise certain rights that they have, or if they're calling because of property standards issue, or I'm not going to renew their lease. I mean, that stuff is happening, and this might not be a perfect solution for it. Maybe it's something else, but I think in this discussion, we'll learn whether or not this is the appropriate way to address that or not. Maybe something else is. If not any.
But why not come up with a committee based with landlords and you guys? We had this a long time ago where we did that, and then we came up with some real. This was 15 years ago, long before.
No.
And with aldermen.
So I'm gonna hold you there. I hear you, and that could come out of exploration. And I want to talk to you after the meeting so we can talk more about that. But I am familiar with the committee. All right, if there's no other discussion, we'll vote on this. Let's call the roll on this one.
Chair Burns. Aye. Councilmember Isles.
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
No.
Committee Member King. Committee Member Hilton. Committee Member Antamare.
Aye.
Committee Member Zalomi.
No.
5-2.
It was 5-2. It was 5-2. Okay. Councilmember Isles.
Unlike this, where it's just a paragraph underneath that says we'll explore, 2.1A says we will implement tenant and community rights to purchase program.
What is that?
This appeared between the two versions. And I do not see how it helps preserve affordability or reduce displacement. And so the example used is the DC tenant law, which is the one that's been in place for the longest. And I happen to have lived in DC from 1996 to 2000, and we purchased a very small 1,000 square foot two-flat. And we owned it. We only lived in it for about 6 months, and then we moved overseas, but we kept it for the better part of 20 years. And we tried to sell it. And I can tell you how this law worked in practice. It wasn't, it added a lot of red tape that complicated what is one of the more difficult processes that you go through when you're buying real estate. It was very difficult to determine the value of the house because the tenant that lived in one of the units, he didn't argue for preserving affordable housing. He didn't argue for improvements to the house. What he asked for was a cash bribe to not select a buyer, which is one of the things that you can do under this act. And so when we refused to give him a few $1,000s to relinquish his right, he sold that right to his real estate buddy, and we weren't able to bring the house to the market. We weren't able to tell, like, we had comparables and we sort of set a value that we thought was fair, but we weren't able to actually bring it to market and find out whether that that was correct or not. It was basically just a shakedown. And so I really have a strong dislike of TOPA, and I would like to see this removed entirely from this document.
Chair, if I could, just before you continue conversation, we do have staff and I think members of the community here that are intending to speak about the anti-price fixing item later on the agenda. I don't want to disrupt this, but I also want to acknowledge the time. Do you think you're going to get to that item this evening, or is it the committee's intent to potentially table that to a later discussion?
So I had it as a third item in the conversation I had with staff, is if we didn't have time to get to it, which I fear that we might not, that we would just hold it to the next meeting, and which is fine with me. I don't, if people want to have a later meeting and take it up, we can. But I did put it third on there, knowing that we might run out of time and we could just discuss it as our first item at our next meeting. So it depends on.
I would like to table it because we've gotten a bunch of new information here. I have not had an opportunity to read through, obviously, because it was just shared with us at the dais.
Yeah.
So
we just won't take it up then. And at the end of this discussion or the next discussion, because we still have work plan, which is very important.
That's right.
So what we'll do is we'll just adjourn the meeting, but we'll keep it on and it'll automatically move to the next meeting because we haven't taken it up at all. We can leave things on the agenda. It's the reason why when we adjourn, when people like try to call a vote, I'm always like, you don't have to vote as long as there's nothing else on the agenda. But if there is, we'd have to vote to adjourn the meeting because then that item will remain and then we would take that up at our next meeting. So I know how to deal with it. I think there's support to probably end the meeting after the housing work plan discussion. And as long as Councilman Kaiser, are you okay with that?
It's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I referred this well over a year ago, but it's 1 month will not.
Okay, and we'll make sure we start off the next
First
meeting
thing,
with
yeah.
it. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Would anybody else like to speak to community right to purchase program? Okay. Thank you. Because Councilman Rogers.
Thank you. Again, I'll just note that there's a financing component in here, and I have concerns about that without the financing being specified beyond the other concerns that there are, about some of the stuff we've heard this evening about tenants being able to purchase properties and how does that work? Do you create a condominium out of it? There's a bunch of different issues here that I think are very problematic. And so I support Councilmember Isles' suggestion that this just not be included at this point.
Member in Tamara.
Thank you. So I take a different approach. I think it's worth exploring and hashing out the possible details. For example, I see the way it's written. One of my questions was around, like the financing stack, so the capital stack in order to purchase it, that would help the community members that are looking to purchase as well as the sellers and get everyone comfortable. So that's been brought up a lot. The other one that I was thinking about is maybe exploring, and this is for like later on, but as an example, thinking of like creative ways in order to structure this. So maybe looking at, as an example, a ban. For instance, if a house is selling anywhere between 5 and 15%, right? Either above or below, if there is a, macroeconomic indicators are hinting toward crash, but hopefully that's not the case. But if it is within that band, giving the community members an opportunity or an option to buy, right? Because on the high end, they're going to be priced out if it's purchased above that. And if it's below that, then you're looking at cash-only buyers who might be able to come in and afford something like that in a market that's in a downturn. And let's say that the community buys it, as an example, again, something for further discussion, but just putting it out there to like visualize like what the discussion could look like around this. That the seller gets paid out a dividend over a certain number of years, right? In order to help them feel a bit better after the purchase. But, and it's been brought up when people have come up to speak where they use the word investors. And so there's always going to be a disconnect between, and not saying everyone falls into this camp, but between the sellers and the buyers in this particular instance, where the sellers are looking at this as an investment and the buyers are looking at this as stable housing. There's always going to be a disconnect. So there's always going to be friction in a conversation. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the conversation and try to explore what that could look like. That's just my thoughts around it.
Yeah, and I'll jump in with this one. I think this one for me is we haven't really discussed this at all, like different from Just Cause. Like Just Cause, we did at least get through a decent amount of discussion to understand, we got through a decent amount of discussion to, at least for me, to know that it's something that we should at least continue discussing. This one's a little different. I have a lot of questions. I mean, I think my first thought is, I think would be great if we had think home buyer program. Like if there was a way that could help people finance the purchase of these homes, which I'm sure would be incorporated into the program like this. Like, I think I'm much more interested in what that would look like. I think what concerns me is the right part, like a right to purchase, as opposed to like, let's just build a program that helps people buy single family homes, buy 2 flats, buy multi-unit properties. If that's what we're interested in, like, let's figure out how we can help people get those types of deals financed as opposed to starting with a right to do it. When we say right, I also wonder, like, does that mean that someone can't seek multiple can you, one person offers this. I could start off saying getting an appraisal and saying okay, I want to sell my property for this amount. And then is that the amount that I have to sell it to the the person that has the right to purchase, or somebody comes in higher? Can I take that over the lower offer? I have a lot of questions with this. I would probably prefer this be that we not include it for now, and I would like some time to think more about this between meetings, and I might try to add it back at council, but I don't know enough about it, unfortunately, to feel comfortable moving it forward at this time.
So I just wanted to
yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Just expand upon what I was saying, the reason why I used the example of the bans. One, I do agree with removing implement and putting in Explore. But the reason why I came up with thinking about the bans and why there should be more discussions around different options is because the provider, so the financing institutions that would most likely provide the capital stack, so the CDFI fund, new market tax credit, which falls underneath that, and some other funds, will probably not want to fund something that is considered to be, I don't know, where there's a extremely huge profit. They may not fund that. So we'll always look, it'll always present, not always, but most likely present a situation where the community may not be able to buy. So trying to think creatively, knowing that there will be, that it won't necessarily reach market rate because of the type of financing that the community is looking to secure. That's what I wanted to add.
And I would just ask people, the scoffing, the heckling, the can we please, there's time during public comment at every meeting, you want to talk mess about it, use that 2-3 minutes to do it. But while we're conducting our business, it would be the same thing that if you were up here, whether it was Mr. Sutton at the Reparations Committee or Ms. Payton in another committee or whoever, I would fight for you to have uninterrupted time up here to do your work. So if we can please abide by that, I appreciate it. Member Isles.
Yeah, I mean, all it does is give the current tenant the right of first refusal. And what happens in DC is they sell that right. Either you purchase it from them, so they just will squat on that right, and you can't proceed with the sale. You can't put it on the market. You can't find out how much it's worth. So you either give them $3,000 or whatever the going rate is. That's what it was in the 90s.
What's stopping us from restricting that?
They've been doing it for 40 years and there hasn't been any. That's how it worked when I lived there. Maybe they've changed it, but that's how it worked in the 20 years that I owned a house there. It was really painful. Now, if you can come up with the version, like there's some language in here that says community right to purchase. Now, if there's some way that the Quadrell Tenants Union can buy the building from Quadrell, I'm all for it.
I'm thinking more of the community and not
Yeah.
the individual per se in order to keep it affordable for the tenants.
All
that are
giving like one single tenant the right, like all it does is delay the process.
No, I
And
get that.
you can't sort of figure out what it's worth. And maybe there's different versions of it. There's a version of it that Chicago has a pilot for in Northwest Chicago. And
Mondale.
yeah, and if you look online, there's pro and for, and I can't really speak to that one because that's not the one I had the experience with. But the DC one that they're giving as an example here was very, very flawed.
I'm thinking of the collective,
Right.
the community, where there are multiple tenants.
Yeah,
that
this
could come
is
together and purchase.
this is nowhere near where it needs to be inserted into this document. I really, I'm going to make a motion to remove it entirely. If there's a version of this that comes back later, it's that's fine. I'd be happy to talk about a community version of it, but the version that the version that DC has is not good. There's a reason it didn't spread to all the other cities in America.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Adikotis?
Yeah, we have, I'm going to say, staff has done a really good job exploring all these things. This is an ambitious plan, and even though I personally think, even if you have this ordinance and one property in 10 years gets bought by tenants, I think that would be a huge win. But there are complexities to it that I think I would rather us spend our energy and time pursuing other programs that we know have a little bit more traction. And so I'm fine with removing it and focusing our efforts on some other things that are a little bit more proven and.
Do y'all need a
support.
vote on that?
Yeah.
We need a vote? Okay.
If everybody's done.
Anybody else, or are we ready for a motion? All right, I think you're good.
I'm making a motion to remove this section from the document.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Isles, seconded by Councilmember Rogers. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Oh, sorry.
Nay.
One nay. My bad. I should have did a roll call. My bad. Any abstentions? All right. And just for the record, we got one no and okay. All right. Next up,
I will move 22C.
we could do a roll call on that one. Yeah, let's just do it. Let's vote again and we'll roll call it.
Chair Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Isles,
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris,
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Committee Member Intemra,
Nay.
Committee Member Zalomi,
Aye.
Committee Member Hilton.
All right. Next up, we have 2.2C, explore a transfer of development rights program. Is everybody familiar with this one? I am, unfortunately am not. But if we can explain this one a little bit more, please. Who was this offered up by? Is this city staff or?
No, this was discussed at the last committee meeting, and I think that there were some members of the committee that felt that it should be removed from the plan. And so that's basically, and then there were some that I think didn't really know if it should be removed from the plan. So we just wanted to bring it back for discussion as to whether or not you officially want it to be removed at this point. Essentially, this program, again, not to design it tonight, would be to explore a program that would allow property owners to potentially sell their development rights to other property owners that then could use them to have additional development rights on their property in the city. So it's one way to conserve existing housing stock in some area, but then those property owners would realize a financial gain for selling perhaps 2 dwelling units to someone else in another location in the city, to really simplify it and boil it down at this point.
Member in Tamara. That was you, right? Or was that out? Did you have?
I did, but
No.
whoever went.
Oh, I didn't know who was first. Were you first? Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna, this sounds a little bit like. Oh, thank you. This sounds a little bit like the real estate equivalent of carbon credits, right? So, yeah, so I'm for striking it, just because of how it could potentially lead to stacking it and concentrating it in areas that are already high density and not achieving the goals that we've set out to achieve of like having more affordable housing throughout all the wards across the city. So that's all I wanted to say, just to get clarifications, like carbon credits. Thank you.
Councilmember Hedekadis.
This is one I had questions on at the last meeting. I would like us to keep it just because I see it doing 2 things. I know that there's a potential to kind of preserve what, you'd call like starter homes in certain neighborhoods. And I know there's parts of the 9th Ward where I think people, even though currently there are people that could, add, 1 or 2 stories to their home, people like the neighborhood because it's attainable for a lot of folks. And this could potentially give people the option of selling their development rights and also keeping the neighborhood kind of, some of the starter homes footprint. Not totally convinced of all the ins and outs of this program, but I would like to learn more and have us kind of see what it would look like in our neighborhoods.
Councilman Rogers.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very much against this. I don't think that comes as a shock to anybody at staff. I just saw Ms. Williams smile. This is basically what we saw happen with 605 Davis, where they had, there wasn't necessarily a selling of development rights, but there was a transfer of development rights between the university building to a 29-story building. I think I made the joke at the last one that somebody could really go into business by just purchasing up a bunch of rights all over the place and then selling them to the highest bidder for large developments. This is a program that really is designed to protect things that you want to protect, but what I see happening here is if we move forward with where I think we're going with the zoning ordinance, do single-family homeowners literally just sell off every last ounce of their rights to protect neighborhoods? Not necessarily opposed to that use of it, in my personal opinion, but I also don't think that's fair and equitable for people to do. Where you see this happen a lot of times is a building that maybe doesn't have landmark protection, but is of significant value to the neighborhood or to the community. We in Evanston have a very, very robust preservation for our properties, but that would be someplace this would be used. You also see it sometimes in smaller towns where farmers will sell off their property rights because they really want to maintain a family farm. That's exactly what they're trying to protect. And so they will sell those rights for development elsewhere in the city. The example that was given, I think it was 1.5 miles away, which basically means you can transfer development rights just about anywhere in the city of Evanston into downtown, which is where you would see this being done. And I think it also puts the city in an awkward position, because if a developer has purchased rights from someone and they come before the city with an expectation that we will honor those rights, we don't have to. So if they come and say, we've purchased all these additional rights, are we obligated to observe that those rights transferred are? If somebody comes, let's say, and says, I've purchased 12 stories, are we obligated as a city to grant them those 12 stories?
So I think it would depend on how the program was designed. I would say that specifically. You could put caps on how many development rights could transfer to different properties in the city. That's how I've seen it done out when I worked in Washington, and they had a similar program where, it was the farmer wanting to protect that farmland in perpetuity, but then transferring those rights to the urban growth area to allow for additional development. So in that instance, there was caps on how many development rights could be afforded to properties within those urban growth boundaries. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be an unlimited program. You could put, restrictions on it, but it would need to be defined in terms of how many development rights could be added to certain properties within certain districts of the city.
So if I went to a 4-flat, let's say we go to 4 flats on all residential properties, would I be able to build a 5-flat if I purchased development rights from someone else, even though the zoning ordinance says I can only go to 4?
It would depend on how the rules, and this would likely be part of the zoning ordinance. It would need to be at least a companion piece so that it was very clear where those development rights transfer and what could be realized in terms of additional development potential on sites. So it's very complicated, and it is very difficult to administer.
And that's the thing, is that, when you start opening this door, where does it stop? Because we already give bonuses for affordable housing, and I would love to see those reduced at some point in the future, because people are getting tax breaks as well as lots of bonus units from us, from the city. And so I think that this is something I'm not willing to entertain at this point until we have a zoning ordinance in place and we know exactly where this is going to be used and how it's going to be used, as opposed to kind of moving this along with a zoning ordinance or anything else, because I can see this being abused in many ways. So I just can't support it at this point now. 10 years from now, maybe we can discuss it in the next strategic housing plan.
Is there a motion to remove or move it forward?
I would move to remove item 2.2C, explore transfer of development rights program.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll roll call this. And this is a vote to remove, and a yes vote would be to remove.
Chair Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Isles,
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris,
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Committee Member Intemra,
Aye.
Committee Member Zalomi,
Aye.
Committee Member Hilton.
Before we move on to the work plan, which we'll be quick with that, there was an opportunity, people also have an opportunity to add anything that was not in the consent agenda or in our packet. I don't think there's anything, but this would be an opportunity. Yeah, Councilmember Rogers.
I just have a minor little thing,
Yeah.
but I'm perfectly fine addressing that between now and when this makes it
Okay.
to council. It's not drastic changes, it's just some clarification questions. So in the interest of time for this evening, not keeping us here till midnight.
Right.
I will withhold those and just address those with staff. Thank you.
Okay. Somebody want to set up work plan for us? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, a motion for?
Yeah, I will.
We need a motion to vote to recommend the plan as amended by all the previous votes to wrap up the.
Okay, somebody want to make that motion?
I move approval of the Housing for All plan with the tonight's additions and subtractions.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Any abstentions? All right.
Then I will move item B, Housing for All preliminary work plan for discussion.
Second.
And this was also in the packet, just so everybody knows. You're probably looking at it already, but it is in the packet. Are we gonna, you want to walk us through it quickly, or do people need that, or are we ready to jump into discussion? It's up to y'all. Would anybody like, what'd you say? You're already up there, so we'll do, if you want to do a very brief, it seems like we're ready to, I'm ready to provide my comments, but you can provide a very brief intro and then we'll jump into it.
Committee members, Chair Burns, Uri Pachter, Senior Housing Planner. Very briefly, just want to highlight that in addition to the implementation section of Housing for All, per best practices, other plans that have moved forward within the city, and requests for additional information from this committee regarding specific next steps over the next year and a half or so. Staff has put together a preliminary work plan for 26-27. This is operating under the assumption that the plan after moving to council is approved based on the draft timeline set by council in June. If it's any other time, obviously we would adjust accordingly, but for the sake of conversation, it includes 6 quarters, 18 months over the course of the second half of 2026 and 2027. We've oriented it based on initiative in addition to an annual report, pulled in implementation year and cost, and basically understand that it's late. We've talked a lot about details. The intention was not to move this forward tonight without additional feedback and conversation, knowing that the plan is intended to move to council in April. That gives the committee an ability to review this in more detail between now and March, and we would come back in March to finalize and potentially take action to allow it to sync back up with the plan in general. Some questions that we have that we're thinking would be helpful for staff to incorporate and improve or expand, modify the plan in the next month, focus on anything else you'd like us to incorporate. Elements of funding and budget are areas that we wanted to highlight. Are there any other prioritization based on sort of the color coding that we have? Is there any interest in moving things earlier or later? Anything seem unreasonable in terms of a timeline? Are there specific budgets that HCDC would like staff to assign for these initiatives? And modeling this process off of the Thrives plan, we're interested in if HCD would be interested in making recommendations around funding allocation so that in addition to staff time and staff capacity, there was additional funding resources made available to quickly move into implementation after the plan's approval.
We'll go Member Zalomi and then Councilman Rogers. I think that's the order.
Okay. I just question, this is page 2 of the chart, of why from 3A of right-sized parking down to housing initiative streamlining are scheduled for 2028, when it seems to me that some of them are very important and should be moved up, maybe to 2027. And I know right-sized or the parking is going to involve the zoning, but zoning, is it planned that the zoning rewrite would be done by the end of this year?
No.
Oh, no? Okay.
Sorry. No, I think at this point, just to give some context to the committee, there's a scope of services that's going to travel to the city council at their next meeting that would initiate a request for proposal process related to the zoning ordinance. At this point, the draft that was released for further feedback and consideration by the council, I don't want to use this word, but envisions that this process would take till 2028, mid to late 2028 to implement. There are some changes in state law, I will say, related to parking minimums that will have to be contemplated by the city prior to that because the state law has preempted local home rule on those items, so zoning will have to be updated to reflect that state law change. But the vast majority of these initiatives are related to the zoning ordinance, and that's why you're seeing them in the research phase through the 18-month period currently.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going to your 4 questions that you kind of posed in the beginning, I think you probably know the financing ones are going to be something I'm very interested in seeing. You know, we had this discussion when we discussed circuit breaker about, you know, having limited amounts of money and sort of deciding where this goes. And I think that may change some of our priorities as well. You know, obviously, if we're trying to do all the big dollar items up front, that probably will not work for us. So having some idea on the finances, things like that, that happen will help us dictate the plan as well, but also let us know, like, if we have to revamp some of these ideas in the process as well. So, you know, we've had the discussion tonight about, you know, finding external sources of funding to help site control. So obviously, that's something we don't necessarily know what that money is going to be or how we would get that or anything. That's a little bit more ethereal. But things that we actually control the funding on, I think are very important for us to know. So it's really kind of that, the idea of, assigning an anticipated budget. And in some cases, that might be, hey, this is going to be our affordable housing fund, and we anticipate it being a couple $1 million over the next 3 years or something like that. It also could be, we have no idea how much this is going to cost. And that's a fine answer as well, because not every one of these is going to be implemented the day it's adopted, or the plan is adopted. So I think that helps us structure our thinking around, are we biting off too much at one time? Do we need to identify sources, and let's start working on that? If something's happening in late 2027, we probably should start looking at funding sources now, if not yesterday. So we kind of have time to apply for grants if that's what we want to do, or identify those sources of funding. So for me, that's the most important thing in this part of the plan.
Thank you. Just wanted to ask a clarifying question so we can accommodate that as best as possible. As we're looking into budgets per initiative, assuming both of these would be feasible, would you have a preference for budget allocations that are based off of that 18-month period, based off of the entirety of the initiative / the entire length of the plan? Would either of those be more or less helpful?
I think that if we have dates assigned, it's the funding that's going to have to be required in the startup, but also the maintenance thereof. So I hate to put more work on you, but it's really kind of two different numbers.
Sure.
We may have to invest pennies, using your chart here, in order to initiate something or to start something, but it may require $2 signs for the ongoing implementation, or vice versa. There may be a lot of startup for something to establish a program, to develop the ideas behind it, but then once it's up and running, it kind of runs itself without a lot of additional funding coming into it. We just are much more passive in that part of the aspect. So it's really both of those.
Thank you for clarifying and providing that direction.
Member Tamara.
So I have comments for each of the questions, and Councilmember Rogers touched on one of the questions that I had. So I'll just go ahead and reiterate that one when I get to it. But as far as, is it possible to include, and I'm reading my notes, the risk and the assumptions for each, and I'm sure you've already done this, but like in regards to staffing, legal analysis, timing, where delays, and you usually touch on that when you provide updates, but like where you expect some delays to happen, what that might look like when it comes to funding, and then the second one is within the prioritization that you have there, is there a way that you can indicate what you feel is urgent and and you have that right now? I think you alluded to that it is, that the way it's been structured, the timeline is based on what's already happening and what we're ready to move forward with. Is that the case or no? Was that my understanding?
So the implementation year is taken verbatim from the implementation matrix in the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other pieces are based on various other components that you were mentioning in terms of what's already in the work, staff capacity, if we're aware of like the timeline, the draft timeline for zoning and plugging those in. So some pieces are our staff's best guess at this point, and other ones we have a little bit more clarity and information.
Okay, that's fine. The one I mentioned that Councilmember Rogers had spoke about was basically identifying the one-time implementation or sunk cost versus the ongoing costs, so we can understand what that looks like. And then the last one, you mentioned the $3 million for the fourth question, and whether or not you can do, and I mentioned this before, like a scenario analysis, like different ways that the 3 million could be, or that the funds could be allocated so that we can kind of decide or, I don't know, discuss which might be the better option to move forward with.
I think in terms of the allocation piece, one of the roles of this committee is you make funding allocation recommendations on, for example, the city's affordable housing fund. So if that is a identified source, we wanted guidance from the committee. Are you looking for us to make indications in this plan where it would be appropriate for this committee to make a recommendation to allocate, for example, affordable housing funds that then would travel to the city council, and ultimately it's their decision if they want to make that allocation at this time or wait until the program or the strategy initiative is a little bit further along. But I think one of the things that happened with Evanston Thrives when that plan went through was there was a recommendation to City Council to allocate $3 million to implementation. And then that $3 million came back to the committee, the Economic Development Committee. They created a prioritization kind of matrix of how they were going to look at the different implementation items. They assigned budgets to everything, and then they divvied that $3 million out to actually achieve or implement the items that were in that plan. So that's the best example we had at this time as to how this could potentially work. But we also wanted to recognize that you do have within your duties the ability to make recommendations specific to the city's affordable housing fund.
Oh, so I did not realize that. So I wasn't sure, like, the flow, like so this is some give and take on like what this budget can look like based on your expertise and how you've seen it done before, but we can also chime in and say that we believe, like, let's say, using the $3 million as an example, that, well, no, because it's too much of a high level of an example, but basically, it's a discussion, it's a negotiation, basically, is what I'm hearing.
Discussion for sure.
Okay. Like, we have some influence on that.
Definitely.
That's okay.
I was.
Tamara, you have anything else?
No, this is my first time going through this.
No, you good.
As a member.
No, your comments were perfect. Councilmember Hedekadis.
Yep, lots of good points so far. One thing I think that would help us with the prioritization of which programs, for me personally, I would like to see kind of the cost per household with some of these programs when you look at, like, housing rehab, just so we get an idea of like what it would cost typically per household to do rehab. That would give me a little bit better idea, like how we break up the funds and how we prioritize, because again, kind of similar, like when we talk about climate action, if we had unlimited funds, it'd be like, yes, just spend all the money. Since we have limited funds, I really want to know what has the most impact. And also, I think it'll be helpful to see what populations we're explicitly helping. So when we're looking at impact, and I know, like, so for example, some of the things that have fairly high dollar amounts in the plan, like housing assistance, like I've come to learn, like, once someone is unhoused, it's much more expensive to get that person into housing than it is to actually keep someone in housing. And so when we look at how we're prioritizing, I think for me, it'd be helpful to see what the impact is per household and the cost, kind of like how many people we're helping with each of these programs.
Member Zalomi.
Yeah, I just had clarification here. Okay, so it has building code updates for 2027, but do you need the zoning changes done first before you do the building code updates? Or, no? Okay.
No. So some of these I kind of lost sight of what they.
Sorry to interrupt. Because of the time that we've been meeting, broadcast needs to take a pause so that they can reset the recording.
Okay.
So if we could just stand at ease for
Sure.
a couple minutes.
All right. We're gonna get going again, so we can. We're almost at the end of the meeting. Just so I don't forget, appreciate our volunteers in particular. I think we get enough pats on the back, hopefully, as council members. But our volunteers.
Oh, yeah, you have such a high.
But it's our volunteers in particular. I don't know hold on. We just lost somebody again. Remember, where's? Okay, so we'll. I want her to. But we appreciate you, Member Zalomi, Member Hilton. Thank you. This is. I think we're 4 hours in. About to be at 10:30. It'll be 4 hours. So we appreciate y'all
Well, I
sticking
don't
with
have
us.
to get up any time now, but- I know, anyway.
All right, so we will keep going, and a member and Tamara can kind of pick up. I think who was speaking? Was it Councilmember Hadikatis? Who was up? I know I have a bunch to say. Maybe it fell to me at that point. If everybody was done, I think it fell to me at that point. So let me pull up my notes. I had lost sight a little bit of what some of these things are. So 3.2C, it says affordable unit requirements. You can give me the quick response, and then if I need more, I'll ask. But what is affordable unit requirements? What is that?
It's the IHO in a nutshell.
Okay. Can we say that? Can we just change that to say that?
In the plan, it's at the initiative level again. So like absent, you can make those changes theoretically on the previous agenda item. Everything in the work plan we're going to have match with the items in the plan at all. So at any point in time when council makes changes, we will adapt the work plan accordingly so that anything that's removed, modified, added will adapt.
I just feel like if we're referring to the inclusionary housing program, which is an existing program, then we should just say that in the strategic housing plan and in the work plan, unless there's a reason not to do that. And I don't think anybody would disagree with that, right? Up here. Yeah, so let's do that.
Noted.
Because of that, I didn't even know what this was. Affordable unit requirements.
Just quickly, is there anything that's covered that's outside of IHO in it?
The element is just that there aren't generally programs listed, and so theoretically over the next 10 years, the IHO could be adapted into something else, or a new program could be run for a different types of covered developments that are.
I see what you mean.
Covering that same intent.
We just put like in parens after at IHO or something, just because that's the program
As an
we have
example,
today.
yeah,
Sure.
Whatever the example thing is in an ISO, yeah, just to help people understand what this is. Okay, and then 4.2A, I think it was 4.2A or 4. Was it 1.4? 4.2A. I thought it was, 4.2A, housing partnerships, and then data tracking, progress and monitoring. Again, just trying to understand what those two things are. We can start with housing partnerships.
No problem. So housing partnerships is basically deepening and expanding those partnerships. That's something we're not going to wait on. So that's ongoing, and same thing with the data tracking and progress monitoring.
What type of partnerships, like with, like CEPAs? Okay.
Any and all.
Okay.
Working, relying on others who have funding, time, resources, knowledge.
And then data
get their
tracking,
goals.
progress monitoring, what is that?
It's related to the programs that we're running, and in addition to the larger goals of the plan to make sure that we're tracking all of those.
Okay, and then I had a note here, 1.1C, fair housing enforcement and education. No, I think I had that wrong. Okay, 3.1A. Maybe this is similar to what you said about the affordable unit requirements, but is that like a putting assets to work thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Both the previous one and this one list the program as an example in the paragraph.
Okay.
But we're taking the one sentence phrase and making it even shorter because we just wanted to make sure there was room on the page. As we
Okay.
adapt this further, we can make it clearer as to what it's referring to.
And building code updates to make things more streamlined, more affordable for developers. What's the idea behind? Is that the idea behind that?
Stairway. Looking at single stairway, small apartment buildings, which reduces the cost and actually works better on infill lots. It could be also encouraging different kinds of building materials, but
That's good.
Yeah.
External housing funding strategy.
Quickly to develop a plan to raise funds from other places so we could do great things and not rely on taxpayers to do it all.
Okay. Housing resources centralization.
Make it easier for folks from the public to access resources that already exist from the city or our partners.
And how do we plan to do that? I know one main way we do that now is when appropriate, working with some of the same organizations to administer certain programs. So it's like a one-stop shop. So if you go to Connections for the Homeless, for example, they manage the TBRA program through the state. We've also had other rental assistance programs. So is it that, or is there something else we can do to make it more centralized?
So there's actually two separate ones. The streamlining initiative is around like one-stop shop and more like from a programmatic standpoint, making sure that if someone's applying for something, we're catching if they're eligible for something else and trying to maximize that outcome.
Okay.
Centralizing resources are a little bit more simple actually, and could be like having them all in a better way on the website so that people can access them instead of having to go to 17 different places or knowing which department is responsible for what.
Okay, I'd like to move 1.2E to 2027. That's property tax relief. I don't know if we need a vote for that. Is that, I thought it was already 2027. I didn't realize it's 28, but that's not like a zoning or a zoning thing, so we could. What are we thinking? Do we need to vote or what? Or have we missed an opportunity to change the implementation year?
Yeah, this would be tied to the plan because it is in the plan that it would be implemented in 2028. We would begin discussing that in 2027.
Yeah, I think we're discussing it now.
We
and
are.
We might be able to implement it in 2027. So I'd like to. So I guess would that be a council where I would change that?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. The same thing with 3.3D. I know we can't do it here, but I'll just put it out there more so for my colleagues who will discuss this further. But also 3.3D, entitlement and permitting processes. I'd like to see that moved up to 2027. I think that's incredibly important that we get that right. earlier on, and then you've already explained housing initiative streamlining, 4.3A. Definitely the audit, I think, also needs to be moved up. I think that feels foundational, the housing programs audit. So I'm definitely going to make a motion in council to do that. And (3.1A) I think was my last thing. Where is it at? Or was it B? No. I don't see a 3.1A. I don't know where it is.
3.1A is like fourth from the bottom on the first page.
That one's the city-owned
it must have
property
been, maybe it was
housing strategy.
3.1C, no, 3.D, innovative development models. It was probably that. That's what it was. Innovative development models. What is that again? That's my last question. 3.1D, innovative development models.
That's sort of a catch-all for larger opportunities, including looking at, for example, green social housing that the city of Chicago is doing.
What did you call it again? I'm sorry.
Green social housing, where the city's green
okay.
social housing. It may be inverted, but basically it's a sort of an enhanced version of IHO where the city's a development partner and therefore has greater authority over sort of like Jackson and Emerson per se, looking to have higher thresholds for affordability. They have more of a program where they're using a quasi-governmental agency that they've funded to fund these developments. That's just an example of a larger model we're not going to get off the ground super soon, but have on the plan as a exploration phase.
Okay. So what do you need at this point? Do we need to vote on this? No? Okay. I don't see any other lights. Any other council member had a cut?
As long as you folks have enough
Oh, yeah, 'cause it's
guidance
coming
from
back,
us.
right? Yeah.
So I think that's, as long as you have clarity, I don't have anything else.
Good. All right. The last thing I'll say before we make a vote to adjourn, and again, we have to do that because there's still items that remain, is also, I've been thinking about this. I really think we need, what in my mind, I'm thinking a task force to help with program design. I'm because of staff capacity and just because I believe in the power of the group. I've seen that work very effectively for important things like this. I just think that with all these different programs that we're going to try to both kind of design, launch, but also kind of vet and evaluate, that this committee and staff could use some additional support. And so I don't think it's appropriate to make that motion here. I'll make it at council because I know there'll be both members on council who will want to participate, but also they'll want to kind of have a discussion about it. But I don't think this is one of those, and I think we're somewhat taking a similar approach with the zoning where there's a committee, not necessarily to design, but I think Councilman Rogers was pointed out an area that he felt needed a little bit more support, and we created a committee behind it. I think along those same lines, I think we need a little bit of additional support, as I said, to design and evaluate programs just to keep up with this work plan, honestly. Unless there's some budget to hire, outside consultants, which even with that, I think we still could use some local voice. So I just wanted to bring it up, something I'll discuss more at council. But that's it. So if nothing else, please, yeah.
Sorry, I just have one staff announcement before
please.
you guys adjourn. Wanted to put a plug out for the March meeting. I know it's really late. It's a really important meeting that we need to ensure we have quorum at.
Okay.
Want to note that the chambers are going to be used because it's election day. So that is something we will not be hosting the meeting in this room, to be determined where that meeting will be held. We're shooting for here at 9:09, but we haven't confirmed where it will be yet.
Could I suggest Quadrille?
Sure. We want to make sure quorum, like I said, we're going to have the caper.
Tommy said she won't be here. How about everybody else? Are you good in March?
What's the date?
It's March 17th. It's election day.
When I made plans to go to New York, I didn't realize.
You got to vote early then, right?
Yeah.
So other than Commissioner Zalomi, everyone thinks they'll be able
This
to
is
be
good
here?
on the 17th? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're
And then we'll do a quorum check email just to confirm
I was going
everybody's
to say, you probably should
attendance.
send that out anyway, yeah.
Yep. So just again, location to be determined. Want to put that out there in advance of the meeting.
Okay. Motion to adjourn, please.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. It's seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays, any abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.